Yeah, we're live. Hi, guys.
Now that's clever. Get to cleverrange.com.au.
Hey, Diane. Good to see you.
Your subscriptions really do help. And if you...
Mum's back in hospital with pneumonia, and Gabe and my cousin's visiting her now. So I've got a dog still. So, yeah, the dog's going to knock me around a bit.
think that you're subscribed, double check, because I've been getting a lot of reports from people saying that they thought they were subscribed, but then when they went and checked, it turned out they weren't, and they had to resubscribe. So, unfortunately, it's just one of those YouTube games that they play. So make sure you're subscribed. And so, all that being said, let's get into it. So, it's this idea of CERN, future prophecy, opening the abyss, demonic communications between dimensions. All of this stuff that we're going to talk about today, it really starts with the graviton. Now, the graviton is possibly one of the strangest theoretical particles ever hypothesized.
Yeah.
Gravitons have never been directly observed, but physicists...
Yeah, Diane, she went in last night. My cousin come up to visit Mum because we all know Mum hasn't got long left, and she had to go in the hospital. Her blood pressure dropped, and she's got pneumonia.
Are confident in their...
So prayers for her, please.
Existence because of the presence of the gravitational field. So it's possible that a soon discovery might take place by means of particle colliders, such as what we're going to talk about today, the LHC at CERN, the Large Hadron Collider at CERN. Gravitons are the particles responsible for gravity. Obviously, gravity in itself is still really mysterious in a lot of ways, but due to scientific advancements, the world might not be far off from the holy grail of physics, which would be definitive proof that the graviton actually exists and the means to study its properties. Now, what makes the graviton especially interesting is its apparent ability to flow freely between dimensions. Of course, all of this, we haven't observed this happening, but all of the math around the graviton points to this having to be the case. And among other potential discoveries, the graviton is at the top of the LHC's to-do list. So the idea is not just to look for the graviton itself, but to look for a gap where particles should be after a collision. That's one way to do this. If they're transferring into other dimensions, we should see gaps where they should be. So the two particle detectors of the LHC, which are called CMS and ATLAS, are able to show us the aftermath of a particle collision. And as in any collision, debris is thrown out and distributed fairly evenly. If, however, the detector shows a gap where debris or new and exotic particles should be, but aren't, then that could be evidence that they've escaped into a higher dimension. Now, there's an idea that gravitons could be used as a way to communicate with beings of higher dimensions. Now, that might sound like the stuff of science fiction, but physicists today are seriously considering this possibility. If gravitons are discovered and used as a way to communicate with beings of higher dimensions or parallel universes, this might be what tells the world that we are not alone. Now, while many are waiting for a type of disclosure event in which otherworldly beings present themselves in their spacecraft to humanity, we might be surprised to find that these beings are end up presenting themselves in a different way, and this might be with an established communication via gravitons. So in September of 2015, for the first time ever, gravitational waves were detected. Before that time, gravity waves, gravitons, and the gravitational quantum field, they've all been speculative and theoretical. Gravitons have never been directly observed. The effects of the gravitational field are seen every day, of course. When you drop a ball, it falls. but without actually observing the waves or particles of gravity itself, there's a limit to what can be learned and accomplished. But now that waves of gravity have actually been detected now, 9-10 years ago, there's no telling what the ramifications could be. So the detection was achieved by LIGO, the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory. The actual waves were created by the merging of two black holes, one the mass of 29 suns and the other the mass of 36 suns. Each black hole is estimated as being roughly 30 miles in diameter. Now, gravity waves are so incredibly weak.
Wow, that's pretty small, 30 miles.
That it takes an extremely sensitive detector like LIGO to be able to detect them. LIGO can measure distortions as small as 1/1000th the size of a proton. The gravity waves LIGO detected lasted only 1/5 of a second. But even more amazing, the detection happened at greater than a 5 sigma standard of proof, which basically everything in science, everything in quantum physics is based on percentages. How likely is this to be true? So they have an extremely high standard, and 5 sigma is extremely high. So that's basically like, this is extremely likely to be true. Like it's not even, it's almost not even worth considering that it's not true. Like it can't just be a fluke. I should mention too, if you want the show notes to this episode and many others that we do, you can go to dailyrenegade.com and become a member, and you can download the PDF. When you go to the video page, the actual video page of whatever video you're looking at, under the description, you'll see a little link that you can download a PDF. These are all the show notes and all the information, so you can follow along. You can have it available. You can read it. You have all the material there if that interests you. And I've just started doing that with some interviews too. Those are just transcripts, and I've only done a couple of them, but those are some of those are available too. But I do have the show notes for this episode at dailyrenegade.com. You can download that PDF and have all of this available. So on one hand, this discovery is really exciting. For us as Christians, it's an aspect of God's creation that has been detected. Another piece of his grand design can now be understood a little bit better. But this could turn into troubling news if and when mankind decides to use this knowledge for dangerous and potentially disastrous goals. So what will this discovery bring? Well, David Wright's executive director, of LIGO has said, what's really exciting is what comes next. I think we're opening a window on the universe, a window of gravitational wave astronomy. Kip Thorne, Caltech's Richard P. Feynman Professor of Theoretical Physics, Emeritus, is also quoted as saying something nearly identical, that this discovery is opening a new window into the universe. Gravitational wave astronomy and new branches of quantum physics are interesting windows, of course, but what of some other windows that might be opened? Well, this brings us back to the goal of certain physicists to develop a gravitational communication system. There are steps towards that goal that must be taken, of course, but this has been in the talks for a really long time, years and years. There was a clip from a documentary I saw 15 years ago, maybe, that was talking about it. So this is how this would work. First would be the confirmed discovery of gravitational waves and or gravitons themselves. Next would be learning to repeat the detection in a lab by creating gravitons or gravity waves. They would do this by putting Einstein's general theory to the test directly and experimentally. Once that's accomplished, there will be enough information to go on to learn how to manipulate the gravitons themselves. And that's not far-fetched. They can already manipulate a lot of particles today and have been able to for quite a while. Now, interestingly enough, the detection of gravitational waves occurred in September of 2015, but wasn't officially announced until 6 months later on February 11th, 2016. Now, I don't believe that was like a nefarious thing. They weren't trying to hide something, but they took that much time to just really show that this is true. To get the percentages up even more to prove, like, yes, this is true. This is happening. This is not a fluke in the machine. This isn't just some background noise that the machine is detecting as something that it's not. things like that can happen very, very rarely, but they're not going to happen time and time again in the exact same way. So they spent 6 months looking at all this to bring up that. That sigma up to 5 sigma or whatever, to bring the percentages up to really prove that this is true. They didn't want to have a fluke, think it's true, announce it, and then be embarrassed when all the peer-reviewed stuff turns out that it was not what they said it was, especially something this big. So them waiting 6 months, I don't believe that was nefarious at all. They were just trying to be careful. But this does lead us to wonder that, what else has been accomplished and not yet announced? Could these discoveries spur on the opening of the abyss in Revelation chapter 9? Only time will tell, but by the looks of it, we're not too far off from knowing for sure. So this leads us to wonder what the world might look like after interdimensional communication is established. And the way that it works, I might be getting ahead of myself in my notes, but I don't remember if I actually wrote in my notes how, like, the actual process of how this works. Basically, what it would be, if you can manipulate gravitons, you can manipulate their spin. And they only spin, they can spin one of 2 ways. So what you can do is create a line of gravitons and adjust the spin, 1 up, 2 down, 2 up, 1 down, whatever, to create a type of Morse code. And then send, because they can naturally do this, send that string of gravitons into another dimension, set up a detector, and then wait for a response. That's roughly kind of the idea. It's more sophisticated than that, but that's basically the idea on how they could send a communication to another dimension. Again, I don't remember if I put it in my notes or not, but and if I did, I'll just read what I wrote. But just for quick understanding of how something like that would work, that's the idea. So let's say that they're actually able to do that. Well, what would the world look like after interdimensional communication is established? And by the way, for all we know, we don't know if this has already been done. I don't think so. I think that if you need to have gravitons, and I don't think that they would keep that discovery hidden, because anybody who can successfully detect a graviton, they're getting a Nobel Prize. Like, no way that they're not getting the Nobel Prize. So physicists really do want to do this. Like, they want to make it public. Anyway, so after communication, after a communication is established, what might that look like? Well, let's read Revelation 9:1-3. It says, "And the 5th angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key to the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power." Okay, so the first thing to notice is that this occurs when the 5th angel sounds. In my book, Cherubim Chariots, which is available right now with my other book, Quantum Creation, as a set, you can get that at prophecywatchers.com. It's the best place to get it. Please don't get it from Amazon. Get it from Prophecy Watchers. But in that book, Cherubim Chariots, I explore the possibility of the number of cherubim faces in Ezekiel's vision, representing spatial dimensions. And we'll look at that in this episode a bit later. But if we include time, it is correct to say that we are 4-dimensional beings. We have 3 dimensions of space and 1 of time. So if we follow that logic, we might have a reference to a being of an extra dimension in the 5th trumpet of Revelation, 4 of space and 1 of time, equaling 5. I also write in Cherubim Chariots about the theory that when the rebellious angels fell from heaven, that they might have fallen to what we would call the 4th spatial dimension. Again, that's the 4th spatial dimension. So we're not including time in that classification. We're just looking at dimensions of space. So the angel sounding the trumpet is likely not a fallen angel, but instead signaling that a fallen angel is about to come into the picture. And the rest of the verse of Revelation 9 states, "And I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit." So this is no ordinary star. According to our modern vernacular, any star that would fall onto the earth would utterly destroy the earth. There does seem to be a connection between stars and angels, and at times the word star can actually represent an angel. We see that in Revelation 1:20, which says, "The mystery of the seven stars which thou sawest in my right hand, and the seven golden candlesticks." The seven stars are the angels of the seven churches, and the seven candlesticks which thou sawest are seven churches. And yes, as some have pointed out, that also might be talking about the church leaders themselves rather than angelic beings. It just depends on how that word in the Greek is used. But we can also see the star as being that this star is a being of some sort because of the words "unto him was given the key." So the star being referred to with the pronoun him shows that this is a person of some sort. Angelic being, it could be a person or being of 4 spatial dimensions rather than 3. And this is most likely referring to a fallen angel. Now, verse 2 tells us that the angel opened the bottomless pit with the key. And the word key comes from the Greek word kleos and can be used as a metaphor for authority. So in a sense, this fallen angel was given permission to open the bottomless pit. We also learn in Revelation 1:18 that Jesus Christ himself held the keys of death and hell, so most likely it was Jesus who granted this authority. Now, we may ask why Jesus would give permission for a fallen angel to open the bottomless pit. We might possibly find the answer in chapter 2, verses 2 through 11 in the book of Joel. It says, "A day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and of thick darkness, as the morning spread upon the mountains, a great people and a strong, there hath not been ever the like, neither shall be any more after it, even to the years of many generations. A fire devoureth before them, and behind them a flame burneth. The land is as the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness, yea, and nothing shall escape them. The appearance of them is as the appearance of horses, and as horsemen so shall they run. Like the noise of chariots on the tops of mountains shall they leap, like the noise of the flame of fire that devoureth the stubble, as a strong people set in battle array. Before their face the people shall be much pained, all faces shall gather blackness. They shall run like mighty men, they shall climb the wall like men of war, and they shall march every one on his ways, and they shall not break their ranks, neither shall one thrust another, they shall walk every one in his path, and when they fall upon the sword, they shall not be wounded. They shall run to and fro in the city, they shall run up upon the wall, they shall climb up upon the houses, they shall enter in at the windows like a thief. The earth shall quake before them, the heavens shall tremble, the sun and the moon shall be dark, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. And the Lord shall utter his voice before his army, for his camp is very great, for he is strong that executeth his word, for the day of the Lord is great and very terrible, and who can abide it?" Okay, so we can learn a lot of truths in this passage. For our purposes here, we only need to note a couple of things. First, as we will see later in further detail, notice that this army is described in many of the same ways as the locust army of Revelation 9, and is probably the same, though there's some contention about that we'll get into. But we also read in verse 8 of their immortality. It says, "When they fall upon the sword, they shall not be wounded," showing that these are likely angelic in nature. Now, whether fallen angels or not is yet to be determined in this video. I believe that these are fallen, but and why? I mean, given the description of the circumstances surrounding these beings, the sun, moon, and stars are darkened, clouds of thick darkness, etc. They seem to be the same locust beings from Revelation 9. But also notice that Joel 2:11 says that this is the Lord's army. How can this be? Well, there are times in the Bible where God will use the enemy for his own purposes. He's God. He's allowed to do that. After all, he's ultimately in control of these things anyway. He can use them as he sees fit. For example, in the book of Exodus, we read that God hardened Pharaoh's heart Exodus 9:12. We also read later in Revelation chapter 9, it says, and the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before God, saying to the sixth angel, which had the trumpet, loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. And the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year, for to slay the third part of men. So as we can see, there are times that the Lord will use the enemy to fulfill his own purposes, usually in the ways of judgment. The locust army is no different. Now, I should mention, too, that some have pointed out a difference in these two descriptions. So the locusts in Revelation are commanded not to hurt any green thing, like plant life, but only to hurt those without the seal of God on their foreheads. The army in Joel is described like this: a fire devoureth before them, and behind them a flame burneth. The land is as the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness. Yea, and nothing shall escape them. So it seems like the locusts in Joel are allowed to hurt the land, and the ones in Revelation are not. So how do we reconcile this? Well, the easy way would just be to point out that the Joel passage doesn't specifically say that the devouring fire is actually caused by the locusts themselves. That could be a secondary thing. It could also be that the land and the desolate wilderness could just be a way of describing people's provisions and supplies. It could be a way of saying, you know, they had everything they wanted before the locusts came, and when they were done, they had nothing, you know, seemingly because they're in so much pain for 5 months that the only thing they're concerned with is their own deaths, but they can't even make that happen. So all their provisions, their wealth, you know, all that stuff, those things would be pointless at that time. There's also a possibility that these are just two different armies altogether. In a recent interview I did with author Gary Wayne, I asked him this exact question, and this is what he had to say. Check this out. So a viewer on the Daily Renegade website actually posted a question that I hadn't thought about before. So when describing these things in Joel, one of the descriptions, it says, a fire devoureth before them, and behind them a flame burneth. The land is as the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them is a desolate wilderness, yea, and nothing shall escape them. So it makes it sound like they're destroying the wilderness, yet in Revelation 9, it says that they're not permitted to touch any green thing or anything. So yeah, what are so like what are these things, and then how do you think about like those two aspects?
Two different beings.
Okay.
Connected but not the same. So what we look at when we see it, and I put this up in section 6 in a couple of the chapters. What I'm going to refer to as two columns. So I'll list the descriptions described in Joel 1 and 2 side by side with the descriptions of the riders and the horses in Revelation 9 and the 200 million man war. They're identical. But these are not
Hey,
human.
Kelly, good to see you.
These are like chimera creatures. They're physical chimera creatures. And they are part of the DNA manipulation, I think, part of the rising military technology, and probably clone bodies that are chimera-like or giant-like for the terrible ones who are in the pit prison, that are the disembodied spirits of the worst of the giants that are coming out, and also chimera bodies for disembodied spirits that weren't in the pit prison. And if you want to know the passage where you can look at these terrible ones as the Erit or the Retim, as you go ones as in the plural, as in giant ones or Nephilim, Rephaim and Seraphim, the serpent ones, and using the male plural. You have these ones that are slain on the earth for doing terrible things, and you have like Tubal and Meshach in there as well, right? That are going to come out
Come on, big fella.
from the pit prison when that pit prison is open, and I think they will be the leaders for this Gog war, and that you will also have a, let's call it a kind of being like the ancient understanding of a unicorn horse. That was a horse that giants rode on into battle. but this is different by the description. It's a different chimera. Unicorns were a chimera being, but they look different than this. But this is going to be an advanced technological creature for these beings to sit on and ride in. There's going to have advanced technical weapons, and they can destroy things that the ones who come up out of the abyss as physical beings, as opposed to disembodied spirits, aren't allowed to destroy the earth. So they're two different beings by the details. There's not contradiction, but they're and the descriptions of the ones that are the scorpion beings in that have first come out under the leader of Abaddon and Apollyon, their description is different than the riders and the horses. Subtle, but different. And the locust army is an allegory for a great army, and it's used several times, and I highlight that term locust armies and when they're used in the first parts of the book, and then we'll connect that into this Joel 1 and 2 war and how that connects into Revelation 9 and Ezekiel 38, 39. So these things that come out are the other ones that Ezekiel 32 talks about that are in the pit prison, and that's the mighty, which is El, as in the fallen angels. And so these are fallen angels that are led by Abaddon and Apollyon. That, you know, I make the case is Azazel is the leader of the Watchers, as we get that out of the book of Enoch. But whoever the leader is, he leads these crazy scorpion beings that are going to plague the earth and sting people for 5 months, and they're going to seek death, but aren't going to be able to achieve death, and that the only ones that they're not allowed to punish are those with the seal of God on them. So we know that includes the 144,000 who have a seal, and I pray and hope that that is like the seal that we have as being faithful of Jesus, that we have the seal of God on us that will protect us. But there will be this destruction on the earth of these beings, and these are something that we don't really get told about in the Bible, but there is a key that they're scorpion, and the Hebrew word for scorpion is a crab, A-C-H-U-R-A-B. Now, what's interesting about that is there are some beings that are talked about in Sumerian mythology, in Central American mythology and religious natures, and in Egyptian and other places around the world that describe a similar being. And they're called in Sumeria the Akraba Malu and or the Gerta Balu. And there's reliefs, etchings all over the Middle East with these creatures. And so what I do is I take those descriptions and I put them in one column of what comes out of Revelation 9 and these ones, and they're identical. So what are these things that are recorded in prehistory in other religions? Well, the standard sort of allegory of their history is that, and I'll use the Sumerian one, is that Tiamat, consort of Apsu before the flood, created an order of warrior kind of beings, and they're called the Gerta Balu or the Kraba Malu, depending on which language you're taking that out of. And that they were created to protect the thrones. They were created to protect the palaces.
Wow, that's a bit of a leap forward, full on digital. Wow.
Created to protect the temples and the gateways to the other world. And so it's amazing that you have these beings that are identical to what the Bible talks about. So there must have been these beings in prehistory, and you also see these things in the Epic of Gilgamesh. So they're even around a short time after the flood, seemingly, and they have the power to destroy the world, which is why restrictions are put on them. And so I make a case that these might be cherubim, and here's how I get there. One is that if you look at Anunnaki reliefs in the Middle East, you see them doing this ritual around this, what some people might term as a technology, or I've heard it as the tree of life as well, but they're doing rituals with these crystals or pine cones and these bags and stuff like that. And there's two different kinds of those depictions. It's the same ritual, just different kinds of beings, similar but different. The only difference, I mean, they both have wings, they're both of these stocky creatures or giant-like. One has the face of a human that looks like a dark-haired Gilgamesh or Nimrod, as they're typically depicted as, and the other one has a eagle's or a bird face. Well, in these kinds of creatures, that is classified by some researchers as part of the Akraba Malu. And so cherubim have a bird face, a human face, a lion face, and a bull face. And when they take the physical form, create their oikotarian, they become one of its heads. So they come to the case if they had produced giants that say like a Gilgamesh, that maybe the mother goddess Nin was a cherubim and had a human face and passed on the dark hair and big dark beard versus the red hair and blonde hair. But if they had a bird face, then they would create offspring like that. But getting away from that sort of rabbit hole is, because I said that's almost a show in itself, but these are what walk out of the pit prison, even though they're equated by some researchers as the same. So we get another analogy that's in the Bible that I think helps explain who these are. The watchers include seraphim, cherubim, ophanim, and archangels. And the seraphim we know as dragon-faced, serpent, six-winged angels. And then we get these really weird things that fallen angels like Azazel are equated with, which are goat gods, satyrs. And satyr is the Hebrew word, compounded word for double goat god. And it's compounded with sa and sarah for meaning hairy, and words like that, and Air, and a hairy goat as well, and Air, which is the Hebrew word for watcher, as watcher is translated from Daniel 4 out of Air in Hebrew. So Sair is some sort of hairy watcher, has to be one of the four. And yet in the occult, they have these goat gods that are associated with angels that we would understand as seraphim. So I think those are degraded seraphim. And not all of them went to the pit prison right away. But we see these goat gods show up after the flood. And we have satyrs talked about in the Bible in Isaiah 13 and Isaiah 34. And they're going to be back again dancing at the destruction of Babylon in Isaiah 13 and also in Isaiah 34. So I think they're coming out of the abyss. But also these other ones, and I think these are degraded cherubim watchers that did the same crime.
Jason and the Argonauts has a good take on what the Saris look like, whatever you call them,
as the seraphim watchers. So that's my speculation, but I lay a case out with the details and provide biblical passages that I think will surprise people.
Give me a mate.
However it all plays out, before they are unleashed into our world, the gravitational communication aspect becomes more obvious when we consider these prophecies. It's possible that the LHC at CERN will detect evidence of gravitons, which in turn could lead to a communication device to higher dimensional entities. I mean, after all, what particle but the graviton could best represent fallen angels? We even have reference to falling, an effect caused by gravity, in the description of the star angel that opens the bottomless pit, obviously. Now, before we continue, I should mention that Prophecy Watchers is putting on a new prophecy conference in Branson, Missouri, and is offering live streaming to all of you. And I have all of that information. I'm going to be speaking there, obviously. I'm going to be speaking there. Really looking forward to it. I have all the information linked in the description below. But the main highlight is to click on that link and then use the promo code PECKBRANSON, all one word, all caps, PECKBRANSON. And again, that is in the description below as well. But use that promo code to sign up, and then you get to enjoy the conference. And the conference goes from December 5th through 8th of this year. But those videos will be available if you sign up for the live streaming thing. You'll still have those for a while after that. And for more information about the speakers and topics, you can visit BransonChristmasProphecyConference.com, linked below, and check all that out. So I'd love to see you there. Love to have you live stream and sign up again. That promo code is PECBranson, all caps, all one word. Concerning the economically unstable times that we live in, it is a great idea to convert some of your savings into real money. Now, there is a big difference between real money and what we call money, which is actually just currency. So our dollar is currency. Of the cherubim that Ezekiel saw in chapter 1 of his book. So for everything that God has, Satan has an evil and inferior duplicate. Satan has never had an original thought of his own, so he borrows, he steals from God and then twists it. He'll make it different or opposite. So when we look closely at the description of these locusts in Revelation and compare it to Ezekiel's vision, we see that they are actually complete opposites. The locust army is very likely comprised of fallen cherubim. They're most likely described as locusts because of their destructive role that they play, not necessarily because of their physical appearance, which is described in Revelation 9:7 as, and the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle. As I show in cherubim chariots, again, available at prophecywatchers.com, link in the description below, the cherubim seem to be an amalgamation of human and animal appearances. Other ancient cultures seem to have witnessed these things as well, such as the Lamassu and Shadu of ancient Assyria. These beings were described as having an animal body, such as a bull or a lion, with wings and a human head. But in Ezekiel's vision of the cherubim, we see an opposite description. Ezekiel describes animal heads atop human-like winged bodies. And we also see in Ezekiel's vision that one of the faces is described as being half human, half lion, and bisected vertically, depending how you read it. Not everybody agrees with that, but I think that that's likely what it's saying. And actually, when I first took notice of that was through Dave Flynn's book. I believe I have it. Yeah, the David Flynn collection. It was in one of his books on Mars, and he was talking about that. But so in Ezekiel, the good guys seem to have the half lion, half human face, but bisected vertically. Now in Revelation 9:7-8, it says, and the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle, and on their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces were the faces of men, and they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were as teeth of lions. Now, if they had faces of men, yet teeth of lions, that would suggest half human, half lion face, but bisected horizontally. Faces of men, teeth of lions. Now it's bisected horizontally rather than the good guys that are bisected vertically. So that could be another attribute to show that these locusts are the antithesis of the heavenly cherubim that Ezekiel witnessed. The ones that come out of the abyss are the bad guys. The one that Ezekiel saw are the good guys. And it's interesting too because we see parallels like that, like in Zechariah. There's horsemen of the same colors as in Revelation.
I remember when credit cards come out here because they mailed it out to everyone in the post, so everyone got a credit card from whatever bank they're with, and because people didn't know what credit cards were, how they work, a lot of people stole the cards out of the letter boxes and made a killing with the credit cards. So they didn't ask for the credit cards; they sent them out anyway, and I'm guessing that's to trap you into debt.
But Zechariah is seeing the good guys, and John in Revelation is like seeing the bad guys. So we do. This isn't an isolated incident. We do see antithesis type descriptions like this in the Bible. So Ezekiel described the heavenly cherubim as carrying the throne of God on top of them. Revelation 9:11 says, and they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. So the word over comes from the Greek word epi, which can mean upon as well as represent a statement of authority. Now, there are times in the Bible that it uses the word epi to describe something physically on top of something else without regard to any kind of authoritative position. Much how the heavenly cherubim were carrying the true God over them, just physically, like the throne of God was physically over them, not just in authority, but actually over them. Well, these fallen cherubim seem to be carrying their false God and King Abaddon. These fallen cherubim seem to be carrying their false God and King Abaddon. Now, as pointed out in Cherubim Chariots, the ancient world likely had direct contact with fallen cherubim, though they called them things like Lamassu and Shadu. And it's possible that the book of Revelation is prophesying a return of these fallen creatures. It's also possible, if interdimensional contact is made through the use of gravitons, that it will be either these fallen cherubim or the king over them that humanity will be in contact with. Now, as I show in my book, Abaddon Ascending, that I wrote with Tom Horn, which is out of print, and I don't know why, but it is. So I don't know if that's available, but I at some point in the future, I'm gonna update and expand all my books. But just for now, I've got a lot. Even if you can't get a hold of the book, I've done a bunch of videos and interviews about this. But anyway, and I did talk about this last week as well, so you can go back and watch that. But in Abaddon Ascending, I talked about how the area where CERN is located today is thought to have been dedicated to this same false god, Abaddon, Apollyon, in ancient times. And perhaps that dedication will manifest itself in the near future. Now, given that, we may see a modern-day repeat of the Tower of Babel and a fulfillment of Zechariah 5 in our near future. And the idea behind all of this is that it's possible the mechanism of opening the abyss, at least on the human physical side, is to open a communication system with gravitons, or to breach the barrier between dimensions in order to explore what's there. And while that's happening on the physical side, on the spiritual side, God is allowing humans to do this, and an angel is permitted to open the bottomless pit, thereby releasing these horrific fallen cherubim on the world. It's like God saying, all right, you want to contact extra-dimensional entities that I clearly separated you from your own, for your own protection. You don't want my protection? Then fine, you'll get exactly what you want. Here's the false gods you keep going after. Let's see how they treat you. And, at that point, hell is literally poured out on the earth. Now, of course, the bottomless pit and release of the locust's prophecy in Revelation 9 might not have anything to do with CERN, so I don't want to create the spirit of fear around it. Even if we as believers were here during this prophecy, and I don't believe we will be at all, but even if we were, the prophecy says this is only going to affect non-believers. These things are not allowed to hurt followers of God, only those who reject him. So for us as Christians, there's really nothing for us to worry about. These things are the false gods people have always rejected God for, and these people that are doing this, going after these things, these people are getting exactly what they want. They're getting to commune with their gods. That's their punishment, because these gods are not good. They're evil. And if you belong to Jesus, this punishment is not for you. Even more, you'll get to commune with your God as well, but instead of it being a horrific, abusive experience, it'll be, wonderful, beautiful, and exactly what you were created for. So if you don't know Jesus today and you're watching this, you should get to know him right now. Start a relationship with him. Change your mind about him. Believe in him. Pray and ask to take part in his promised salvation after this life passes. One thing is for sure. You will die someday. Everyone will.
Yeah.
You
you do not
want to run the risk of running into horrible beings like this, or even worse, when you leave this life, if you don't have salvation in Christ. You want to make sure that you're protected and that your entrance into God's eternal kingdom is secure. Today's the day to get that taken care of. Right now, call out to Jesus and be spiritually born again in his name. All right, we do have a lot more to talk about, but we are going to do that in the members only section. We're going to talk about the good guys, the throne guardian cherubim of Ezekiel's vision, and how that relates to Revelation. So much cool stuff in that. So head on over to dailyrenegade.com and get a membership. It's only $10 a month or $100 a year, and I definitely suggest getting the $100 a year. It's cheaper in the long run, and you don't have to think about it for a whole other year. So we also have other shows, hundreds of videos not available anywhere else. Not only on Daily Renegade, but also the Vault. So dailyrenegade.com. And there's also a great social media platform embedded into Daily Renegade where all of us renegades can talk and converse with one another. It's about just fellowship. Some people have asked, why the name Renegade? Because in the current world system, the way that Satan has the world system set up now, we are renegades just by being Christians. And it's a good thing. We want to rebel against whatever authority the enemy thinks that it has. We don't want to listen to that and fall in line. So that's the deal with Renegade and Daily Renegade, because we're that daily. Every day that you're a Christian, every day that you are serving Jesus, you are rebelling against the perceived authority of the enemy, and you're being a renegade to the world system. So that's great. Good on you. So dailyrenegade.com, we got a great.
Okay, he's got another one. I love stuff on CERN because we know that's where they're coming out of the abyss through CERN. Which one was it? Is it that one? Oh, wrong one. Hang on. Yeah, that's it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sharpening Report. I am your host, Josh Peck. For some time now, ideas about possible occult connections with CERN have been presented on various internet blogs and opinion columns. So today, we're going to be examining some of these claims to see if any legitimate connections can be made. What is presented here is just a small percentage of the total amount of research, evidence, that kind of stuff that's available everywhere. And it's important to view any claims like this with an open mind, but we should not accept these claims blindly, and we shouldn't dismiss them without reviewing all the evidence. And the reason that I'm doing this today is there's a lot of good information and a lot of false information around CERN. So today I want to get more into the history, the mythology, just kind of the weird symbolism, and even a little bit of the prophecy. I want to do that more today rather than looking at how the LHC actually works, what it's actually doing. If you would like an episode on that, let me know in the comments, and I can definitely do that. So to start, let's look at CERN in ancient times. So a large portion of CERN is found in a commune in eastern France called Saint-Genès-Pauli. And this commune was actually identified as two separate towns. Before it was given the name Saint-Genès-Pauli in 1887, the two towns were named Saint-Genès and Pauli.
Diane, I'm going to guess American Express or Visa, either one.
Interestingly enough, Pauli used to be a small Roman city by the name of Apolliacum. Before dissecting the evidence surrounding the ancient seat of Apolliacum, we should first delve into the history of St. Genès' namesake. So the origin of the name of the town of St. Genès can be traced back to an individual who is surrounded by legends and mystery. It's generally believed the name Saint Genès came from Saint Genest, also known as Genesius of Rome, who was a legendary Christian martyr. So the legend of Genesius of Rome states that Genesius, prior to his conversion, was once the leader of a theatrical troupe in Rome. And in his plays, he would ridicule Christianity, especially certain rites. In one such performance, which was to be in front of an audience containing the Emperor Diocletian, Genesius was going to ridicule the sacrament of baptism. The play began, and Genesius took on his role of a person stricken ill.
Diane, I thought it'd be Visa. It used to be American Express, but you don't see much American Express in Australia anymore. But Visa, that's what I thought would be the most commonly used card.
Two other actors asked him what was wrong, and Genesius said he felt he had a weight on him that he wanted removed. Next, two different actors dressed as a priest and an exorcist entered. When the actors asked what he wanted to alleviate his sickness, Genesius expressed that he wanted to be baptized. And it was shortly after this point in the play when things became very real for Genesius. He broke the fantasy of the play, claiming to see actual angels, and asked to be baptized on stage for real. This completely outraged Diocletian, and Genesius persisted in his newfound faith, even to the point of torture and death by beheading. Now, today, Genesius is regarded as the patron saint of actors, lawyers, barristers, clowns, comedians, converts, dancers, epileptics, musicians, printers, stenographers, and torture victims. And his, of course, this is all Catholicism, but his feast day is August 25th. Now, coincidentally, August 25th is the same day Paris was liberated by the Allies in 1944. Though recognized as a legend, there is a kernel of truth behind the story of Genesius in Rome. The very real Genesius of Arles is often combined with the legend of Genesius of Rome. So Genesius of Arles was a notary who was martyred by Maximanus in the year AD 303. He's the patron saint of notaries and secretaries, and his feast day is also August 25th. So it's said while he was performing his secretarial duties that a decree of persecution against Christians was read out loud. Hearing this and becoming outraged, Genesius threw his tablets down to the magistrate's feet and fled. He was then captured and executed. Now, interestingly enough, the account of this mysterious individual does not end here. It's believed by scholars that Genesius of Arles is the same as the Spanish Saint Ginés de la Llaga. Now, if true, this actually adds a lot more depth to the story because there's a really interesting legend behind this individual. The legend states that after Genesius of Arles was beheaded, he was buried in Arles, but angels transported his head to Cartagena. Now, another variation states that when Ginés was decapitated in France, he picked up his own head and threw it into the sea, which carried it to Murcia. Now, these are thought as accounts to explain why stories of the same saint and the same cult are found in two different places. Also, the feast day of Saint Ginés de la Llaga is also August 25th. The cult of Saint Ginés is thought to originate from the cults of the Islamic jinn, surprisingly enough, the Roman genius, or even with an ancient Carthaginian site dedicated to Baal. In Islamic belief, the jinn are beings made of smokeless fire that come from Jinnistan, another universe beyond our own. And from a Christian perspective, these jinn might be viewed as fallen seraphim and extra-dimensional in nature. Now, the genius in Roman mythology is the individual instance.
Diane, I think they've cried wolf too many times now. What idiot's going to start getting vaxxers now?
Of a general divine nature that is present in every individual person, place, or thing. And lastly, the false god Baal-Hamon was the supreme god of the Carthaginians. Baal-Hamon was generally identified with the Greek god Kronos, the Roman god Saturn, and the Semitic god Dagon. Now, interestingly enough, Baal and Dagon are both mentioned in the Bible frequently. Now, the repetition of August 25th between the three representations of this mysterious individual certainly causes one to take note. The only common theme with this particular date seems to be, strangely enough, space exploration. So on this date, August 25th in 1981, the Voyager 2 spacecraft made its closest approach to Saturn. Interestingly enough, we just mentioned Saturn.
Hey, Phil, good to see you, mate.
1989, the Voyager 2 spacecraft made its closest approach to Neptune. And on August 25th, 2012, the Voyager 1 officially left our solar system and became the first man-made object to enter interstellar space. So this apparent connection between the heavens and this mysterious individual of many names may have more parallels when we look into the namesake of the second town, Poeli. Now remember, this is the mythology and the legend surrounding the area that CERN decided to build the LHC on. That's why we're talking about this. So Poeli was a small Roman city that likely took its name from the Latin Apolliacum that we mentioned before. So it's believed that it was given that name out of dedication to the god Apollon or Apollyon or Apollo. Apollon can be identified with the biblical Apollyon / Abaddon in the New Testament, the Greek god Apollo, and even, surprisingly enough, Nimrod of the Old Testament, who is sometimes known as the man of many names. Just like Genesius, who could be called the saint of many names, Nimrod, who was also reported as being decapitated in the extra-biblical book of Jasher, connects here as well. So the connections between Nimrod, Apollo, and Abaddon / Apollyon, of course, they've been thoroughly researched, but there are a few more interesting details that are not commonly discussed. So Apollo was worshipped by the Romans as well as the Greeks. In Maubeuge's Indre, a commune in central France, Apollo was equated with the Celtic god Atep. Oh my gosh, what a hard name to say. Atapomaros. Okay. So these two characters were combined to create Apollo Atapomoros, which can be translated as great horseman or possessing a great horse. Kind of sounds like something out of Revelation. In the Celtic belief, horses were closely related to the sun. And the interesting thing to note is the connection between this idea of Apollo being associated with horses in France, where part of the LHC and CERN resides, with what the book of Revelation states about Abaddon. It says, and the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle, and on their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon.
This is China.
So given these descriptions, this is something that people have asked, is it possible that CERN will have something to do with the opening of the bottomless pit described in Revelation 9? Now, this is a possibility many researchers have looked into recently, myself included. And if you want more information on that, if you want me to delve into that, let me know in the comments below. We got lots that we got to get to today, so there wasn't time to fit it in because that's a teaching all its own. But if you would like that, let me know, and I'd be happy to continue on that line of thought in another video.
Okay, you'll go on Monday, aren't you?
But that's a possibility that a lot of people have looked into. And with that prophecy in mind, we can look into other mythologies and see more potential connections to CERN. By the way, if you guys aren't familiar, I probably should have said this in the beginning. Most people know what CERN is. CERN is just the governing body that decides what to do with the LHC, the Large Hadron Collider, which is the biggest, most powerful machine that human beings have ever created. It's a big particle collider. Some people are worried it's going to open a black hole or a portal. But again, we're just looking at the history of this. And if you want more on that stuff, let me know. I'll be happy to do another video continuing on this. But this here is just mostly about the weird history, the symbolism, CERN and mythology that we're going to look at in just a second, because that name does pop up. What that statue is all about. That's what we're going to be talking about in this video. Its logo, the CERN logo, is that really a 666? We're going to look at that kind of stuff in this video. And again, if you want another one that gets more into the Revelation stuff or how
that's great,
works,
Phil.
this could easily
Good
be
news,
like 3
mate.
meetings. So let's talk about CERN in mythology. Now, like I just mentioned, that word CERN can be found in ancient mythology. So, for example, in Dorset, England, there's a legend of the Cerne or Cern Abbas giant, which is often associated with fertility. In Celtic mythology, the god Cernunnos is depicted as having antlers or horns. And he is also shown with torques around, like these rings, like around his neck and hanging.
Talia, he had a motorbike accident, one of them bush motorbikes. Apparently come off a motorbike and was really banged up. He's lucky to be alive.
Antlers. Cernunnos is sometimes recognized as the god of nature or fertility, and torques are large metal neck rings that were once associated with nobility and high social status. The word torque comes from the Latin torque or torque, T-O-R-Q-U-E, like how we would use the word torque, meaning to twist. It comes from this word because of the twisted shape that many of those rings had. And because of the association with various creatures, Cernunnos is sometimes described by scholars as the Lord of the Animals or Lord of the Wild Things. Now, in biblical terminology, this could be understood as Lord of the Beasts. And Cernunnos is sometimes recognized as being associated with sailors, commerce, and material wealth. Some may recognize this is a possible connection with Revelation 18, where the great city of Babylon, and there's a bunch of commerce and sailors and stuff. But also Lord of the Animals in Revelation 6, there's a strange prophecy about how people, like a fourth of the world, are going to be killed not only by war, famine, disease, but also by the beasts of the earth. So there's a possible connection to Cernunnos there, because that's a strange prophecy. And then obviously with Revelation 18. Now, Cernunnos has been associated with Baphomet, an important deity in occultism. Baphomet is also synonymous with the symbol of the goat pentagram, known as the sigil of Baphomet, which is a 5-sided star in the shape of a goat head, which many of you have probably seen before. Now, from Wikipedia, this is what Wikipedia says about it. Quote, the original goat pentagram first appeared in the book La Clef de la Magie Noire by French occultist Stanislas de Guaty in 1897. So it says the symbol would later become synonymous with Baphomet and is commonly referred to as the Sabbatic goat. Samael is a figure in Talmudic lore, and Lilith, a female demon in Jewish mythology. The Hebrew letters at the 5 points of the pentagram spell out Leviathan, a mythic creature in Jewish lore. This symbol was later adapted by the Church of Satan in 1969 and officially named the sigil of Baphomet. End quote. Now,
there's no protection on a motorbike if you crash.
The myth of Cernunnos is explained in further and more provocative detail in Italian witchcraft. Here, Cernunnos is known only as CERN, spelled exactly the same way, C-E-R-N, and has a brother named Lupus. CERN is seen as the stag god, while Lupus is seen as the wolf god. It's said that on the day of the spring equinox, Lupus was hit by a bolt of lightning shaped like an arrow while hunting a deer. Lupus then died, and on the next morning rose from the underworld as the sun. CERN learned of his brother's death and became the god of this world. That's actually what it says. And as we know, that title is attributed to Satan in the Bible. The only thing left behind from the death of Lupus was his wolf skin. Now, this is interesting, which was found in the forest by another hunter. To some of you, some of this might be starting to sound familiar. It turns out that the pelt had the magical power to transform men into wolves. The first man to wear this wolf pelt became a priest of Lupercus and founded the Society of the Luperci.
No way.
So we find, some of you may already know where I'm going with this, but for
Nimrod.
those who don't, we actually find a really interesting parallel to this story in the book of Jasher concerning Nimrod.
Knew it.
And I'm just going to read it. And Cush, the son of Ham, the son of Noah, took a wife in those days in his old age, and she bare a son, and they called his name Nimrod, saying, at the time of the sons of men again began to rebel and transgress against God. And the child grew up, and his father loved him exceedingly, for he was the son of his old age. And the garments of skin which God made for Adam and his wife when they were out of the garden were given to Cush. And I'm just going to break in right now. Now, remember, in the Bible, it does say that. It does say that God created clothes for Adam and Eve, and apparently must have slaughtered an animal to do that. So this is saying, Jasher's saying that was actually kept and it was passed down. So again, I'm going to just read that again. And the garments of skin, which, and Jasher's going to say that they had, these garments had some kind of abilities. The Bible doesn't necessarily say that, does not say that either, but just, you know, of course, we always want to go with the Bible, but this is an interesting story. So again, it says, and the garments of skin which God made for Adam and his wife when they were out of the garden were given to Cush. For after the death of Adam and his wife, the garments were given to Enoch, the son of Jared. And when Enoch was taken up to God, he gave them to Methuselah, his son. And at the death of Methuselah, Noah took them and brought them to the ark, and they were with him until he went out of the ark. And in their going out, Ham stole the garments from Noah, his father, and he took them and hid them from his brothers. And when Ham begat his firstborn Cush, he gave him the garments in secret, and they were with Cush many days. And Cush also concealed them from his sons and brothers. And when Cush had begotten Nimrod, he gave him those garments through his love for him. And Nimrod grew up, and when he was 20 years old, he put on those garments. And Nimrod became strong when he put on the garments, and God gave him might and strength. And he was a mighty hunter in the earth, yea, he was a mighty hunter in the field. And he hunted the animals, and he built altars, and he offered upon them the animals before the Lord. That's Jasher 7:23-30. I should mention too, if you are a member of Daily Renegade, if you're viewing this on the Daily Renegade website where you get the full video, I have a PDF attachment that you can download, and it's all the show notes.
He's only 10 years old, is he? Okay.
To this episode. So all of the Bible references, the extra biblical references, all of the information is in that PDF. I make that available only to Daily Renegade members. So if you're not a member, head on over to dailyrenegade.com right now. You'll get to see this entire video in full, and you'll also get the show notes. Okay, so later on in Jasher, we get the rest of the story, and it continues. And Nimrod dwelt in Shinar, and he reigned securely, and he fought with his enemies, and he subdued them, and he prospered in all his battles. And all nations and tongues heard of his fame, and they gathered themselves to him, and they bowed down to the earth, and they brought him offerings, and he became their lord and king, and they all dwelt with him in the city at Shinar. And Nimrod reigned in the earth over all the sons of Noah, and they were all under his power and counsel. And all the earth was a...
I never knew he had 8 small can't even say it. I didn't know he had that many plates in his head, Phil. I didn't know he was that bad. Wow.
One tongue and words of union, but Nimrod did not go in the ways of the Lord, and he was more wicked than all the men that were before him from the days of the flood until those days. And that's Jasher 7:44-46. So we can see how Nimrod could be identified with CERN as the god of this world at the time. In fact, Satan himself could be identified with CERN, according again to 2 Corinthians 4, chapter 4, verse 4. Nimrod may also be identified with the first person who put on Lupus's pelts and became the priest of Lupercus. There's many ways to make connections and assign biblical identities to various myths surrounding CERN. That doesn't mean that those myths are correct. Those are twisted versions of the truth. But if the truth is all this stuff with Nimrod, then we can see how throughout time and demonic influence, those stories got twisted into all this mythology around Lupercus and all that stuff. It's the same kind of story, just with some satanic embellishments. Now, next we're going to talk about the strange statue in front of the CERN headquarters and what its symbolism means. But before we do, let's hear a quick word from our sponsor. Excuse me. Check this out. Concerning the economically unstable times. Oh,
Just like this house, at Honey, we're turning insurance on its head. We don't wait for accidents to happen. In fact,
the economy's terrible. Very good idea to get protect your assets, protect your money, protect your retirement, your 401k. I only trust Cornerstone. It's the only one that I know. There's so many scammers out there.
Amen to
Make
that,
sure
Phil.
to check them out. All of the information is in the description below. Okay, so let's continue. Let's talk about this statue of
Amen to that,
so
Phil.
since its unveiling in 2004, so this has been up for about 20 years now, CERN's statue of the dancing Shiva has caused quite a bit of controversy among Christians, especially in recent years. This is a large statue that they have right out in front of the CERN headquarters, and it's this big Indian epic, this Shiva dance thing. And we're going to look into that. So many look at the mythology of Shiva and the Nataraja dance and question the true motives of CERN. Is this statue meant merely as a piece of art? Or, as some claim, is this a foretelling of future destruction, a prophecy of doom? Well, the mythology behind this statue is very dramatic. Shiva is one of the main deities of Hinduism. He's part of the Trimurti, which is the Hindu Trinity. Shiva is known as the Destroyer. Many of you, there's connections to Apollo there, or the Transformer within this Trinity. One depiction of Shiva is known as the Nataraja, or Nataraya, meaning Lord of the Dance. This is the depiction that embodies the statue at CERN. That is what this statue is showing. The Nataraja depiction shows Shiva as the cosmic dancer who performs a divine dance to destroy a weary universe. Shiva does this in order to make preparations for the god Brahma to start the creation process. The statue shows Shiva in the middle of a circle of flames with his left leg raised and balancing over the demonic dwarf Apasmara, who represents ignorance. Apasmara in Hindu mythology is a demon that cannot be killed. Hinduism teaches a balance between ignorance and knowledge, and to kill Apasmara would be to throw off the balance. This would mean that knowledge would be attained without effort or hard work, thereby rendering it meaningless. So since Apasmara cannot be killed, Shiva uses his right foot to crush and subdue Apasmara during the Nataraja dance. And it's believed that Shiva remains in the Nataraja form to forever subdue Apasmara. So the statue of Shiva at CERN contains an inscription of a quote by physicist Fritjof Capra, which states, quote, "Hundreds of years ago, Indian artists created visual images of dancing Shivas in a beautiful series of bronzes. In our time, physicists have used the most advanced technology to portray the patterns of the cosmic dance. The metaphor of the cosmic dance thus unifies ancient mythology, religious art, and modern physics," end quote. Now, shockingly, there is more to be read on the statue that claims Shiva as the most superior god of all religions. Just utter blasphemy, right? So from the website of Fritjof Capra, quote, "A special plaque next to the Shiva statue at CERN explains the significance of the metaphor of Shiva's cosmic dance with several quotations from the Tao of Physics. Here is the text of the plaque. Ananda K. Kumaraswamy, seeing beyond the unsurpassed rhythm, beauty, power, and grace of the Nataraja, once wrote of it, it is the clearest image of the activity of God which any art or religion can boast of," end quote. Now, that's obviously outright blasphemy. But more recently, Fritjof Capra explained that, quote, "Modern physics has shown that the rhythm of creation and destruction is not only manifest in the turn of the seasons and in the birth and death of all living creatures, but is also the very essence of inorganic matter. And that for the modern physicists, then Shiva's dance is the dance of subatomic matter," end quote. And it is indeed as Capra concluded. Quote, hundreds of years ago, Indian artists created visual images of dancing Shivas in a beautiful series of bronzes, and our time physicists have the most advanced technology to portray the patterns of the cosmic dance. The metaphor of the cosmic dance thus unifies ancient mythology, religious art, and modern physics. So, end quote. So, given the mythology behind the statue and the type of scientific pioneering that CERN represents, it's caused many to wonder if there's a deeper meaning here. Some have even gone as far as to say that Apis-Mara represents the church or the true God, because again, this is a false religion. This is an inverse. This is a twisting, a satanic twisting of something real. And when you look at all these false religions, they are blasphemous towards the Christian God. So some have gone as far as to say that Apis-Mara represents the church of the true God, and then Shiva represents Satan. The circle of flame represents a spiritual portal of some kind, and Shiva represents Satan traveling through the portal to destroy the church, subdue God, and take over the world. Obviously, that will never happen, but that's Satan's plan. So there are those who believe that CERN and the LHC will be instrumental in this process and will play a big role in end times prophecy.
Stood on the foot.
Let's talk about their logo. So CERN has a logo. If you've seen it, it kind of looks like circles with some branching parts coming out. And just as with the statue of Shiva, the logo of CERN has caused an equal amount of controversy. If you turn it upside down, if you look at it just right, the CERN logo kind of resembles 3 6s, which some claim is a clear sign of the biblical mark of the beast from Revelation. This also resembles a hand gesture that is thought to signify the 3 6s of the mark of the beast.
Yeah.
Just looks like that, you know. Now people are going to screenshot that and saying, "Look, Josh is throwing up satanic hand symbols." But I was just doing that to show you what the hand symbol is, so you know what it looks like. And when you look at the CERN logo upside down, it looks a little kind of sort of like that. Some people have made the claim, sort of. So most times that symbol that I just showed is shown over an individual's right eye, signifying the all-seeing eye of the Illuminati and Freemasonry. And there are some who interpret the CERN acronym in the middle of the 3 6s as representing that eye. Because when you look at the logo, you see CERN, and then you see those 3 things. Now, most people outside of a conspiratorial research often deduce CERN's logo as representing nothing else but the design of synchrotron particle accelerators. And they do look like that. It's even said that this was to be the original design for the logo, but it looked too much like a black hole, so they changed it a little bit. So as it stands now, you know, opinions are split as to whether we have a massive coincidence or a massive conspiracy. Personally, I don't put a whole lot of importance or power in symbols like that. You know, I know in witchcraft and occultism, they're all into symbols and stuff, but it's just like a minute ago, I had no problem showing you guys that symbol because I don't really believe there's any, you know, I don't believe that me doing that is going to invite a bunch of demons into the house or anything. I don't think the symbol itself really has any power. It's more about like what it represents.
Yeah.
It's like if they changed that logo, does that mean that they're giving up some of their dark spiritual influence if they have any? No, probably not. I think probably the logo is just synchrotron particle accelerators, because if you look at pictures of those online, that is exactly what they look like. So that makes total sense to me. The statue is weird. I will say that. The statue is weird. But again, it's a symbol. It's just you know, it represents bad things, but the thing itself doesn't really hold any power. For example, if you were to knock down the statue, is that going to change anything if CERN does have dark intentions? And I'm saying if. I'm not saying that they definitely do or definitely don't, but if they do, would taking that statue out, would destroying it, would that affect anything that they're actually doing? Would that take away some of their dark power? No, probably not. Because if they have any kind of dark influence, if they are occultists and things like that, the symbols and the statues, it's really just more of a showing off thing, kind of. I think of it more like that. It's just like with us, you know, I mean, you know, there's obviously power in the cross. Like, we know that. There's power in the cross. But if I hold two sticks together in the form of a cross because somebody's breaking into my house, is that going to stop them? No. If they want to break in, they're going to break in. And, you know, maybe I can use the two sticks to defend myself, but spiritually speaking, that's probably not going to do anything. That doesn't mean that there's not power in the cross. It's just in that context, what's that really going to do? Now, obviously, God can perform miracles. He can do anything he wants. He could work through that to stop the break-in, but chances are that's not going to do much. Because that's not the purpose. When we say that there's power in the cross, we're talking about the salvation power of Jesus' death on the cross. It's a symbol that points us to something else. Well, Satan doesn't have any original ideas of his own, so he steals from God and twists it. So Satan has his symbols too, and I don't think that they're something that we Christians should fear. And I wouldn't say that we shouldn't take them seriously, but I don't think that we need to actually fear them. But I think it's good to understand, what are they saying by putting these symbols up? Like, what's the history? Like, I think the statue there was pretty deliberate. The logo, I'm not as sold on that one. I don't know. I think the statue was deliberate in some way, at least from who gifted it to CERN. CERN obviously was going to accept the gift, because that would have looked bad if they didn't. But I think there is symbolism there that is worth looking at, and all the history of the area surrounding where CERN decided to place the LHC. I think that's all important. Okay. All that being said, we do have a lot more to talk about, but we're going to do that in the members only section. So if you haven't had a chance yet, head on over to dailyrenegade.com and get a membership today. It's only $10 a month or $100 a year, and I would suggest getting the $100 a year.
Guys, this guy, the Spaniard he's called, he does a walkthrough through the suburb I grew up in. So here's where I grew up, guys. He does a walkthrough through the suburb.
Have you ever considered just how different dogs are to us? This Jack Russell can jump higher than an elite athlete. Each dog is incredibly unique. Feed your dog's unique needs with Royal Canin Precise Nutrition.
I'm out and about, flying around, sussing out the woods all over the world.
Or through the brick wall. We're in the thick of it now, but
I'm Spaniard. I was raised in the housing areas of Sydney City. Spent most of my youth and adult life in prison. After a total of 13 years, I'm free. I'm out and about, flying around, sussing out the woods all over the world. So
he goes walkthroughs through the toughest hoods in countries, and he pulls it off because he's an old school crim. He's very street smart.
all right, everyone, welcome back to Into the Hood. I'm in Sydney City. I'm at a suburb called Redfern. Today, I've been trying to get here for a long time. We're going to a place called Mount Druitt. Mount Druitt is, without a doubt, Sydney's most notorious suburb. It is ranked as the most dangerous suburb in Sydney. Two of the suburbs within Mount Druitt actually rank number 1 and number 5 for most dangerous places in Sydney to go. A lot of gangs out there, a lot of street crime, high levels of violent crimes out there, gang fights in the streets, bats, machetes, goes off out there, attacks on police. Anyway, starting in Redfern Station, to get to the specific suburb we're going, that's called Wilmot, it's about an hour 40 from here. It's a train ride and then a bus ride from Mount Druitt Station.
Wilmot is one of the worst of suburbs.
Listen, before we go any further, 10 seconds, we got Let's Orange merch. We got white shirts, hats, as you can see. There's hoodies, there's black shirts if you don't.
So it's a 57-minute train ride from here. We're getting off at Mount Druitt Station, and from there we're catching a 759. It's 16 minutes. I forgot to say the suburbs we're going to. I didn't tell you the goodness, lad. I've got some juice lined up. The three most notorious suburbs, Wilmot, Shelby, and Bidwell, which are all at the back end of Mount Druitt, which are like away from the train station, obviously. We're meeting people there at Wilmot. One of the boys is a rapper from Sydney, Goodrich. We're meeting him at Wilmot. He grew up there. He's going to show us around Wilmot. And then in Shelby and Bidwell, one of the older boys from jail, Bumpy. We're gonna bump into Bumpy. We're gonna bump into Bumpy, and he's gonna show us around Shelby and Bidwell. They're waiting for me to come, brother, and we're gonna be rocking up on a bus, like I said, brother. Let's go. We started here, which is the city central. We started at Redfern, and Mount Druitt's all the way out here. So it's almost as west as you can get before you leave Sydney. All right, here we are, Mount Druitt Station, lad, finally. Bus from here, 20-minute bus ride, and we're there, brother, and we're there. This is where the buses are, clearly. Just had someone screaming out for me, laddie, we'll try to run, brother. Run, I'm going to get usted. So. All right, just messaged the first lad, Woodridge. Told him I'll be there in about 15 minutes. I don't know exactly where he is and where I'm jumping off. Look how we just go over roundabouts. Straight over. I don't exactly know where he is or where we're jumping off. Oh, we'll find him. I'm sure we'll find him, right? Oh, you can see it's definitely getting a lot worse. Didn't expect to see me on the bus. I'm getting off at Wilmot. Starting to shoot. Walk through. Oh, it's the next stop? All right, mad. Thanks, boys. Later. All right, I think I'm getting off here, brother. It is here. There he is. He's here straight at the bus stop. We got it in the first go. What are you doing, lad? Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's good. Good, Rich. What are you doing, lad? Nah, I've been good. How you been? Yeah, good, brother. Yeah, hectic. Okay, now, lad, we're in the thick of it. This is the thick of it, bro. I noticed they get worse at the last suburb, Lethbridge Park. Yeah, Lethbridge Park. Lethbridge Park's pretty bad too, bro. Yeah. That's just.
I lived at Lethbridge Park for a couple of years.
Yeah, I noticed it just then, bro.
But to be honest, this area's all cleaned up a lot, lad.
Yeah? You grew up here, right?
Yeah, I grew up here my whole life, bro.
Yeah, mad.
But yeah, this area's cleaned up hectic. This is the aftermath of everything, really.
Like everywhere else in Sydney, pretty much, eh?
Basically.
So how many suburbs are out in Mount Druitt in general? It's like 10 or 12, eh?
Yeah, the main ones are Lethbridge Park, Shelby, Wilmot, Bidwell, right? You got Edmonton, you got Old Mount Druitt, right? You got Hevo, you got Hasselgrove, like you got everything through here, bro.
Yeah, but these ones here are the ones that are known to be the worst.
Yeah, definitely, bro. Shelby, Bidwell, Lethbridge Park, Wilmot.
Look at his house. It's a bit.
There used to be a house here. Yeah. And he used to, I don't know what happened to a lad, but every time I'd be coming to school, lad, bro, I was always shitting at lad walking through here because it was just partying.
Oh, no way.
Right, it doesn't matter what time of the day it was, lad.
Oh, in the house they used to be here?
Yeah, they knocked it down, lad.
No way.
Yeah, bro. That was there for ages too. So, right, where we're going now, bro, is basically.
Yeah, you can see all the flats coming up, bro.
This is the thick of it, bro.
The yard? At the playground? At the play area? Oh, God, there's the house. The lad went past, I'm making a joke because it's fresh behind us. And I go, look at that, is that the play area? And he just looked at me like, what? And then he goes in and that's his house, like, that's his yard.
Okay, so you get the Hey guys, that goes for about half an hour. Oh mate, your mum's at the hospital. Don't yell at me. There we go.
Watchers. We have a very special guest today.
Mate.
His name is Josh Peck, and I think after today you're going to remember that name. Josh, welcome to Prophecy Watchers.
It's great talking with you again. Thanks so much for having me back on.
Josh, I've got a couple of books here. That is Volume 1 and Volume 2 of Forgotten Prophecies of the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yes,
and
sir.
I asked Josh, why 2 volumes? He said, well, for technical reasons, there was so much there, we had to put it in 2 volumes.
Mhm.
But the Dead Sea
Honey,
Scrolls,
come
I
here.
think everybody's heard
Hazel,
about
come
the
here,
Dead Sea
mate.
Scrolls, but they don't really know what they are, what they say, when were they written, who wrote them.
Yeah.
Why did you take up this subject?
Well, there's a lot of amazing history here, and I had those same questions when I first heard of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I at first was even a little apprehensive about them because I thought, well, is that the Bible? You know, but one of the things that was really interesting early on when I first started this research is actually in the Dead Sea Scrolls, every book of the Bible, except Esther, but every book of the Bible.
Hey, Shawnee, good to see
the Old
ya.
Testament, it was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So just from a historical point, what it shows, and these were written at least a couple of hundred years before Christ. Many of them were earlier, but it was at least up to that time. And what makes them really interesting is it shows the validity of the Old Testament. There's a common argument, especially around college campuses nowadays, that say, well, how can you believe the Bible when it's been changed so much, you know, over hundreds and a couple thousand years? It's exchanged hands and it's been translated and changed and changed. Well, what we can do with the Dead Sea Scrolls, that's the oldest copy that we have of the Old Testament. We can look at that and then we can look at our modern Bibles today.
She hasn't coughed at all today, so she coughed a little bit yesterday, but she hasn't got kennel cough anymore, Shawnee. Thank you for the honey advice. It worked.
And realize, oh wow, they actually match up really well. So that blows that argument out of the water. The Bible hasn't been changed.
The Bible hasn't been changed. And you know, there's a lot of discussion about the ancient portions of the Bible, the early years, from Genesis 1:1 and right up through the flood, and much discussion. And you're saying that that was not a forgotten subject.
That's right. Yeah, it's all in there. And what's even more interesting about it as well, at least to me, is among the Dead Sea Scrolls were also extra biblical books that the original writers, they would have been called the Zadokian priests. A lot of times we call them the Essenes. They're technically 2 sort of different groups, but they go hand in hand. Essene was just a general term around Israel if they believed in the Zadokian way, the people of Qumran, the priests that lived in Qumran at that time, if they believed in that way, rather than the Pharisees or Sadducees. And the Zadokian priests, their way of belief was basically what the Old Testament teaches, like how we would interpret it. This is extremely similar. So they had other extra biblical books, including Jubilees, Enoch, some of these books that people might be familiar with, and they held them to high regard. So we have access to those as well. Not only is there great history that provides a lot of context in the Bible. For example, what happened between the Old Testament and New Testament? Why is the New Testament, why is Israel so different than the Old Testament? Well, all of that's explained. There's really good history there. So nothing in the Dead Sea Scrolls, the extra biblical books, actually changes the Bible, but it provides a lot of context. There's also a lot of exciting facts in there too.
Speaking of exciting, I have to ask, what's the most exciting thing you found when you were writing these books, these volumes?
The most exciting thing was how much is in there about our time today, or what I believe is our time today.
Now, if you say that,
I know I got to back it
up. That's right. Yeah. You're talking about prophecy.
Yes.
Okay.
So what's amazing is they had a prophetic.
Check this out, guys. I got my cousin's dog with me. Look at him. Hello, Diesel. And there's little Molly. There's my cousin's doggies. He loves me.
Calendar. They had their own calendar that they said was the original calendar that God gave to Adam in Genesis. And it was a solar calendar. So this is different than what the lunar calendar of the Pharisees at the time was. But They had a solar calendar that they believed was exactly the original that they always followed. And in that calendar, there's certain prophetic cycles. So they have...
Sean, the Aborigines in Australia used to put honey on wounds and that. Apparently there's antibacterial stuff in it. There's stuff that fights bacteria in honey.
Just like we have decades and centuries and things like that, they also split up time, but it was usually around 7s and 50s. So they would have a Shemitah.
They're saying hi, Diesel, you big old bullhead.
Years. They had an Ona, which was 500 years, and then they had an Age, which was 2,000 years. Well, we can take that calendar and we can actually backtrack that now with all the information that we have available through the Dead Sea Scrolls, and we can find out that they counted the end of the Age of Torah at what our year 75 AD would have been, and then 2,000 years is an age. So we just add 2,000 years, we get 2075 for the end of our Age of Grace, which they actually called it that. Now, when I say that, I don't want people to freak out, because I'm not saying that we have to wait until 2075 for Jesus to return. Because remember, when Jesus came the first time, he was probably crucified around 32 AD, somewhere around there. Well, that would have been that's quite a ways earlier than 75 AD. So, you know, I've wondered, well, could we see a repeat of that? Could Jesus return early in our...
Shawnee, the natural bees of Australia, they're not like honeybees. They're a lot smaller. They're probably the size of a fly.
Final 50 years, our final Jubilee, which that begins early to mid-March of 2026. So we're like right there. Could Jesus return early in our Jubilee? And could there be a gap of time somewhere? Perhaps a gap of time between the rapture and the beginning of the tribulation, perhaps a gap of time between when Jesus returns and when the official starting date of the millennium begins. And there's several different ways that this could all pan out. So in the book, I do not try to provide an exact date of when the rapture is or when Jesus returns. I don't know. But I think if we look at all the prophecies and put them together, we can at least ascertain the season. And I think, at least I hope, hope's probably a better word. I hope that sometime within this final Jubilee, we should start to see a lot of prophecies being fulfilled.
And you know, things are happening on planet Earth that people are pointing at right now, particularly in the Middle East and particularly in Israel. And that puts it right back home.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you're excited about that.
Very.
We're excited about prophecy, and there is the
they're really
question.
small.
Can we calculate the date of the rapture? And so many people have tried.
Yeah, and 100% of them have failed.
That's right. But you know, I think we're supposed to be excited about the Lord's return.
Yeah, absolutely. I think speculating and trying to think, well, maybe it's this or maybe it's that. I think
what are you doing?
You know, I think that when we get excited about what he has.
No, don't roll that way. You'll roll on the laptop. No.
As bad as when people get ugly about it, or they try to set an exact date and they get people riled up and saying it's definitely going to happen now. You know, go ahead and sell your house or run up your credit cards. And I actually put in the conclusion of the book, I say, hey, all of this is exciting, but if I were a betting man, the safest bet is 2025, 2026 is going to come and go and nothing's going to happen. If I had to bet. So I say in there, you know, don't run up your credit cards, don't sell your house, don't do anything ridiculous like that. Just study this stuff, study prophecy, and get excited about what the Lord is revealing.
Well, you know, my idea about calculating the date of Christ's coming is he could come today.
Absolutely.
That's it.
That's right. And if we live every day like that, then every day we can have that excitement and that expectation.
And there's great motivation there.
Yes, for sure. And man, that is one of the biggest straw man arguments against the pre-trib rapture stuff. Because I do write about the pre-trib rapture in here, and I connect it with Dead Sea Scrolls stuff. But one of the biggest attacks is like, well, where's the motivation then? If you're pre-trib, you're just waiting for God to come and rescue you and you get to escape. It's like, well, yeah, we do get to escape, but that gives us more motivation that we know it could happen tomorrow, so we better get busy and get souls saved. I would imagine the other, if I was post-trib, I don't know if I personally would be that motivated, because it's like, well, we got to wait for all this other stuff. I know I got at least 7 more years. So,
now, I want to go back to the books for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely.
You used a word a minute ago, Zadokian.
Yeah.
Now, what does that mean, and why should we even examine that?
Yeah, so in the Bible, God said that the true priests of Israel were supposed to come through the line of Zadok. And Israel had messed all that up. And they started having priests and kings that didn't come from the lines they were supposed to. So it's a long story. It has to do with the intertestamental period, but the basic rundown of it is when all of that was going on, and when Israel, the Pharisees and Sadducees were adopting this new lunar calendar, the I guess you could say the true believers in the way that we're supposed to understand the Old Testament, they said, okay, no, we're not doing that. They went to Qumran, and they kept the traditions of what's actually written in the Bible, as opposed to just the traditions of the fathers, like what the Pharisees and Sadducees were doing. So those were the Zadokian priests. And when they appointed a priest, they would make sure that it was from the line of Zadok, just like God said it was supposed to be. So that's why we use that term. And then the word Essene just comes in. Around that time, there were a lot of different beliefs, just like today. There was a lot of different interpretations, but the three main ones were Pharisee, Sadducee, and Essene. So there were a lot of Essenes all throughout Israel. It's not that all Essenes were in Qumran. It's just if you believed in that interpretation, you were an Essene. It's kind of like, only in structure, not in theology, but it's kind of like how the Catholic Church in the Vatican.
He's trying his best to be.
If you're at the Vatican working, you're a certain thing, a priest or whatever they call it. But if you're just out in the public and you're a Catholic, then you're a Catholic. But they all kind of believe the same thing. The structure was similar back then. The Zadokian priest, and I want to make sure it's just the structure, not the theology. I'm not saying they were actually Catholic. Just in the structure that the Zadokian priests in Qumran were kind of running the show and teaching and doing all that. And then the students of that, the people that believed in that interpretation, were Essenes.
We're talking with Josh Peck, and by the way, occasionally you'll find his articles in the Prophecy Watcher.
That's right.
And let's just break for a moment, and you can find out how to subscribe to our magazine.
10 years ago, we began an exciting journey, a mission dedicated to spreading the good news of the soon return of Jesus. In the last 2 years, tens of thousands of prophecy watchers from all over the world have subscribed to our monthly magazine, The Prophecy Watcher. 12 DVDs on Bible prophecy can be yours when you subscribe to our 48-page full-color magazine for just 1 year. Print or digital format, all for a gift of $50, with shipping included in the USA. Recent events have turned the world upside down. The COVID-19 pandemic was followed by Russia's war in Ukraine, all overshadowed by the horrific October 7th tragedy in Israel. The prophets of the Bible predicted a series of end-time wars, and we're seeing the final pieces of the puzzle fall into place. Russia, China, Iran, Syria, Turkey, the enemies of Israel are on the doorstep, just as the Bible predicted some 2,500 years ago. The Prophecy Watcher magazine includes the writing of dozens of prophecy experts like Gary Stearman, Mando Gonzalez, L.A. Marzulli, Bill Fallis, Josh Peck, and many others, writing on fascinating subjects like the Rapture, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Red Heifer, the World Economic Forum, the Global Reset, digital currency, the Mark of the Beast, the Nephilim, and the Antichrist Beast system of global control. Things you will likely never hear about in church. 12 bonus DVDs will introduce you to Ezekiel's Gog and Magog War. We'll examine the supernatural side of the Bible as we investigate controversial issues like the Nephilim, government UFO.
$50 for all them books. That's a good deal. It's not like Begley's deal where he gives you $49, sells you an album and it's got 4 songs on it, because that's what he did to Hannah.
Cover-ups and the Shroud of Turin will address the Luciferian rebellion, a mutiny that changed heaven and earth forever. Speaking of heaven, you'll enjoy Mondo's glimpse into God's creation as he explores the stunning beauty of the stars and galaxies, seen through the lens of our Psalm 19 observatory cameras. 12 issues of the magazine plus 12 bonus DVDs, a $180 value, now available for your gift of $50 to support our worldwide television outreach. Care to become a fellow Prophecy Watcher? Just visit our online bookstore at prophecywatchers.tv. Partner with us today and help us take the message of the soon return of Jesus to the whole world.
And we're back with Josh Peck. This is fascinating to me because before the break, you were getting into something very, very interesting. And that is when you think of the Jewish people, the 12 tribes, you think of their prophets, but the people themselves often do not believe the prophets.
Right. And that was a big deal during that time too, because the Pharisees and Sadducees had thought that all prophecy had ceased. But the Zadokian priests and the Essenes fully believed in prophecy. They were running the school of the prophets still. And so when you see prophets around that time, they were most likely Essene because they were the only ones that actually believed prophecy still exists. And isn't it interesting that we're kind of in that today? We're kind of in a situation today where there's people that fully don't believe in prophecy at all. And there are many who do. So it's one of the other more surprising things when I was studying this is seeing the issues that the Essenes were having, not only within themselves because there were heretical factions as well, but with the other ruling classes at the time, and how similar that is to our day today. A lot of the same things, a lot of the same strange beliefs. I mean, within the Essenes, they had heretical factions that were basically what we would call sacred namers today. They believed that the name itself was so important that you had to get it exactly right, otherwise God's not going to hear your prayers. They had this hyper view of idolatry where they said, and this wasn't the main Essenes; these were heretical factions, but where you can't even carry a coin with somebody's face on it because that's an idol, and that's the same as worshiping an idol. Kind of like how you can't have a Christmas tree in your house at Christmas because it's an idol. I mean, all this stuff is so familiar, and I wrote a chapter in the book about that because I found it so interesting that it's like, wow, there really is nothing new under the sun. The same issues that the true believing Jewish people of the time were dealing with, we as Christians, the true believing Christians, we're dealing with those same issues.
Now, you've got a chapter in here about the Essene calendar.
Yes.
Now, we've talked with Ken Johnson from time to time. He's gone on that.
Yeah.
But it's really, tell everybody why that calendar is so interesting.
Oh, man. Well, the prophecies found in it. I mean, the cycles that they use. And Ken has done an amazing job. He's actually because he can read the ancient texts. I don't know how to read ancient Hebrew, so I rely on Ken's work a lot, which, by the way, he wrote the foreword to my book, so I'm not like just taking his work or anything. But he's helped me out quite a bit understand the calendar and its importance and how it works. And what's so important and so interesting about this calendar is you can take this calendar, the Essene calendar, and from any book from Genesis to Revelation, and it fits perfectly. It fits every day count you get in Genesis with the flood, everything with Moses and going up the mountain for so many days, and you can match this on this calendar, and it fits perfectly. But even more interesting than the historical stuff is the prophetic stuff. We have a lot of day counts in prophecy. 1260 days till this, 1290 days till that. You can actually map that out and answer some really interesting questions. So it's been, for example, this is kind of a smaller one, but it's been a big debate in Christianity, those at least that study prophecy. When do the two witnesses arrive? Is it the first half of the tribulation or the second half? And there's arguments on either side, but with this calendar, you can definitively answer it and say it's got to be the first half because it's the only way those day counts work. If you try to put them in the second half, they just don't work. And so there's little things like that,
And the second half, the days are shortened. So, yeah, I agree. It was in the first half they show up, which means they're due any day, to be honest.
Can help us pull together these prophecies and try to construct at least a rough timeline of what the tribulation is, when these things are actually going to happen, which I attempt to do in the book.
Josh Peck is his name. A little subtitle here, The Lost Prophecies of Qumran. Everybody's heard of Qumran. And they've heard that there used to be a discrete, almost like a little city.
Yeah.
It had all of its facilities. And the people who lived there were very, very special people.
Yep.
Who had a strict way of interpreting the ancient document.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, because they didn't want to fall into what they considered, and they didn't want to fall into the sins of the Pharisees or the Sadducees. They actually had harsh words against them and called them children of darkness, and they called themselves the children of light, the sons of light. So they really took the text seriously. Like when you think of a Berean, or when you think of somebody today that just really drills into the text and they don't want to go on all these flights of fancy and try to reinterpret the Bible to mean what they want. but really stay true to the text. That was the Zadokian priests. That's what they did. So I just love it. And so far, I have not found anything in the Dead Sea Scrolls that contradicts the Bible. It adds a lot of context, doesn't change anything. The theology is the same. And it's really pre-Christianity. You know, there's a big question in academia, like what happened to the Essenes? Like what happened to Qumran? Why did they leave? Where did they go? Why did they leave these scrolls behind? Well, what happened is they got saved, they became Christians, and they took the Great Commission out to the world. Like they took it seriously. And so it's amazing to know that we come from this. We're the beneficiaries of this amazing group of people in the text.
What a story.
Mm-hmm.
What a story that is. I just have to stop and think about that a minute. These very righteous Jews, very scholarly Jews at Qumran were there when Jesus came.
Yeah. Yeah, and they knew what to look for, because even in the Dead Sea Scrolls, there were specific prophecies of when Jesus was going to arrive.
Do you suppose he visited their village?
Yep, I'm sure he did. Yeah, I have no doubt about it. But this is why in the Gospels, like there are times where Jesus can talk to a whole group of people, like thousands of people, and they all get saved with him barely having to say anything. But then there's other times where he'll talk to a few people, and no matter what he says, no matter what miracle, they just will not accept it. Well, the people that accepted Jesus so easily were primarily Essenes, because they had these prophecies that they were looking for. They had an amazing Dead Sea Scroll called the Melchizedek document. And in that, it actually tells what Shemitah, in their calendar, like exactly what year, basically, to look for the Messiah, even being killed. And they had that right down to the year. So when that happened, so many got saved because they've been waiting their whole lives for this. So they knew exactly what they were looking for. Whereas the Pharisees and Sadducees, they had completely different interpretations. They were looking for something else that was totally different. So it's technically a myth. We hear sometimes, no Jew in Israel knew at the time what the Messiah was going to be. None of them knew. That's actually a myth. The Essenes knew what to look for. It's just the Pharisees and the Sadducees that we hear the most about, they had no clue because they had totally different interpretations.
So it makes sense that Qumran set itself apart.
Yes.
And became a discrete little city.
Yeah.
And because they were probably rejected. A lot of people probably thought of them as kooks.
Yeah.
People who
cultists,
took it too far.
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
Doesn't that sound familiar?
It does sound familiar. Indeed. The forgotten prophecies of the Dead Sea Scrolls. These are heavy documents. I've read a few excerpts. I haven't had a chance to read both volumes in detail, but you have a great writing style.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I try to keep it simple. I know these are dense topics for sure, but I try to write the way that I speak. I try to write it so anybody can understand it. I don't overcomplicate things. I'm not technically an academic or anything like that. So when people get this book, you're going to actually be able to understand what you're reading.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, if you write a book, you're an academic.
Yeah. So.
And so, Josh, as we come closer to the end of this program, what would you have people take away from this study that you've done?
Yeah, so one of the main things is I don't want people to take it too far, because that tends to happen with any of these things.
No date setting?
Yeah, that. And in the introduction, I actually I introduced the audience in the book to how we got our Bibles in the first place, because there's a lot of debate. People who really enjoy the Dead Sea Scrolls, they say, well, shouldn't they be in the Bible? It's like, well, you don't really want that, because for one thing, if they were, your Bible would be so thick, like it would be so hard to get anybody saved. It's like, okay, you're saved, Jesus, here's this stack of papers to read that'll take you 90 years. Like it just practically speaking, it would make the Bible way too long. But not only that, I look at the Dead Sea Scrolls more as history. Now, they may have been inspired during that time for those people. Are they inspired now? I don't know. I think the safe way to take them is take it as history. And if there is ever a contradiction between something in the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Bible, then you got to take the Bible every time. I haven't found any. That doesn't mean that there's not. But so I would say, enjoy the Dead Sea Scrolls for what they are. We can definitely learn from the history. That provides a ton of context in our Bibles. We can learn a lot from the prophecy. That adds context to our prophecies as well.
We hear that story about the little boys chasing a lost sheep or something, and they threw a rock in a cave and they found a scroll, and everybody said, well, just an accident. No, that was no accident.
It happened at the exact same time Israel was becoming a nation.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. It's like, that's not a coincidence.
Not a coincidence at all. And God unfolded these manuscripts at just the proper time.
And what's amazing too is the very first scroll that was discovered was Isaiah, and specifically there's a prophecy about the old one speaking out of the dust of the ground. And well, that's probably the Dead Sea Scrolls. I mean, we're not thinking that it's like an actual resurrection of the dead prophets and stuff, but that's probably the Dead Sea Scrolls. Their voices are crying out from the ground. That's exactly what happened. And so not only do we get all this validation for the Bible, the Old Testament that we already had, but we get all these extra insights that provide a lot of context to things that we already know.
We're talking with Josh Peck. We're going to pause now, and you can discover just how you can obtain your own copy of Forgotten Prophecies of the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Okay. This is 2 weeks old, this one.
Hi, everyone. In today's update video, I wanted to go through a few news stories and talk about what's really going on. We've heard news of a second moon, apocalyptic meteor showers, a coming pole shift, and so much more, devastating solar flares. I actually have 12 different news stories, 12 different things that we're going to be looking at today, but I'm going to go through them really fast. First, I'm going to provide a preview for this week's sharpening report that's going to be on CERN. And by the way, if you want the episode right now, you can get the full video, not just the first half that we put for free on YouTube, but you can get the full video right now, early access at dailyrenegade.com. The full video, the full sharpening report episode will not be available for free on YouTube or Rumble. The first half will, but the rest is available right now at dailyrenegade.com for a subscription of only $10 a month or $100 a year. And if you can do it, get the $100 a year. It's cheaper in the long run. You get 2 months for free. Also, if you view today's update video if you're viewing this right now on the Daily Renegade website, you'll find a PDF that you can download that has all the show notes and the information contained in this video. Easy to download, easy to read, easy to follow along if you want all the information. Also, if you're viewing this for free on YouTube or Rumble, please subscribe and make sure to click that bell to turn on all notifications. I've gotten a lot of people say that they are subscribed, but they thought they were subscribed, but YouTube has unsubscribed them. So make sure you check that out and make sure you are subscribed with all notifications turned on. Okay, that being said, let's discuss about CERN to begin with. So the question comes up, is CERN opening a portal with their Large Hadron Collider device? There clearly have been some strange events around CERN and even some alarming quotes from some of their higher-ups. For example, CERN science director Sergio Bertolucci is actually quoted as saying if they are ever able to breach through to somewhere else, to other dimensions, that unknown unknowns might actually come through. And it's also been on the CERN website that among their goals is to discover, probe, and map out unknown dimensions. So that begs the question, is this even possible? And if so, how close are they? Well, in short, the Large Hadron Collider, right now the world's largest and most complex machine ever built, actually doesn't do anything that natural cosmic rays are already doing as they enter our atmosphere. So this means that if CERN were able to create a portal, there should be portals opening every day naturally in various places throughout the Earth's atmosphere. And clearly we have no evidence of that. Therefore, at least for now, as far as we know, CERN can't open a portal, as far as we know, at least not by the way that they're colliding particles, because again, those same particles collide in our atmosphere all the time. And as far as we know, the atmosphere is not full of demonic portals opening all the time. All right, let's talk about an animal attack prophecy. Did you know that animal attacks are actually on the rise in our day? And why is that important? Well, there's a prophecy in Revelation 6 about people getting killed by animals. And believe it or not, there's a strange connection to CERN in this prophecy, but I'm going to save that for this week's sharpening report about CERN. So look forward to that, or go to Daily Renegade and watch it now. But there's a prophecy in Revelation 6 about people getting killed by animals. So is the increase that we're seeing today just a birth pain of the total fulfillment that will come in the tribulation? Revelation 6:8 says, "So I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and the name of him who sat on it was Death, and Hades followed with him. And power was given to them over a fourth of the earth to kill with the sword and hunger and death, and by the beasts of the earth." Well, since the 1950s, animal attacks have been increasing. It's actually getting so bad that between 2021 and 2022, animal attacks increased by 19%. And in that same time period, the number of animal, lizard, and insect bites increased by 16.7%. It's almost as if the beasts of the earth are getting more agitated the closer we draw to the time of the tribulation. So could this be an example of a prophetic birth pain, an increase in a type of prophecy that's ultimately going to be fulfilled in the future? That's a good question. Let's talk about a magnetic pole shift. Have you heard about this? Is a magnetic pole reversal prophetic? Is it happening?
Good night, Kelly. God bless.
Pole reversal doesn't mean that the planet will actually flip upside down. That's not what it means. Instead, it's just speaking of the magnetic field. So something called the South Atlantic Anomaly is a section of the Earth's magnetic field showing signs of significant weakening. It covers the space of most of South America and the neighboring oceans. This area has already fried satellites and endangered astronauts. And
Phil, do you remember about a year ago all the animals were walking in circles, fish swimming in circles, birds flying in circles? It was crazy stuff. It went all around the world.
The International Space Station had to be fitted with extra shielding because of this problem. Laptops in space shuttle flights have crashed, and the Hubble telescope has to turn itself off every time it flies through this area. It's even thought this area is to blame for the destruction of Japan's most powerful X-ray observatory. Now, what would a magnetic pole reversal look like? Well, imagine that, but all across the globe. This is what it would be like while the poles are reversing, and there is some evidence to show that might be happening. The South Atlantic Anomaly has been growing ever since we started measuring it in 1958, showing evidence that we might be in the beginning stages of a magnetic pole reversal, which may end up being the cause of some of the prophetic planetary changes we see in the book of Revelations, and we might even see birth pains of that before that. So it's good to be prepared. Just imagine if the electric grid went down today. How long can you survive with the things that are in your house right now? That's something I think we all need to ask ourselves. Speaking of which, solar flares are another concern. Now, experts theorize that we're due for a massive solar flare. So a solar storm, which is now called the Carrington event, struck the Earth on September 1st, 1859. Now, the following day, the northern lights were seen farther south than ever recorded before. Well, we live in a time now where where aurora borealis is being seen in places that it normally wasn't before. So back then, telegraph operators reported getting shocked by their equipment and seeing arcs of electricity sparking due to the powerful electric currents flowing through the wires. Telegraphs were able to send messages without being plugged in because the atmosphere was so charged. Surges caused the telegraph paper to combust. This event caused widespread global outages, but imagine if that happened today. They weren't as dependent on technology back then. Today, millions of people would be without power and unable to use their phones or other devices. Satellites, electronics would be fried. In the banking industry, ATM and credit card transactions, the transfer of funds and banking messages, they all travel through satellites. Widespread communication loss would be inevitable. There would be utter chaos. Now, is it possible that God will use a solar flare to bring about prophetic events that we read in Revelation? Will we see birth pains of solar flares and power outages prior to the tribulation? Well, again, let's say, what if that were to happen? How long can you survive with what's in your house? Very, very important. Another birth pain that we've been seeing is how nations rising against nation. Now, there's an often overlooked prophecy that really describes our time very well today. So when talking about the end times, Jesus in Matthew 24 says, "For nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places." Now, that's important because we're seeing all of these signs increase today. We're going to talk about earthquakes next, but let's focus on how nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. Now, kingdom against kingdom means actual governments and countries, so we get that. But did you know that nation against nation in the original Greek actually means ethnic groups? It means that the topic of race will be the focus and racial groups will be against racial groups. So ask yourself, does that sound familiar? Don't we live in a time and a place where, unfortunately, race is viewed as the most important human trait and tensions are rising exponentially because of it? And if that doesn't describe our day-to-day, I really don't know what does. But that's why it's important to know these prophecies so we can avoid pitfalls associated with them. One of the other prophecies in that verse was about earthquakes. Earthquake prophecies. Well, Matthew 24:7 tells us that a prophetic sign of the end times is earthquakes in various places. There are more earthquakes being recorded today than ever before, and they are increasing. Now, the reason for this is politicized. Some say it's because of climate change. Others say it's because our equipment to measure earthquakes is better today, so by default, we're recording more. But probably the most simple answer is that yes, earthquakes are just increasing all over the world. Think about it. Our technology is better today than 100 years ago, but how much better is it than just last year or the year before? I'm sure we're not replacing earthquake detecting equipment every single year. So if we keep seeing an increase in earthquakes, yet they're using basically the same equipment that they've had for 5 or 10 years or so, then there's probably just more earthquakes, and it has nothing to do with the equipment. Matthew 24:8 tells us that these are just the birth pains, and that there's more to come. Each of those prophecies, even more intense versions, are found throughout the book of Revelation. So will we see smaller versions of other prophecies from Revelation before the beginning of the tribulation? Now here's a weird one. You might have heard that we're getting a second moon. So have you heard this news that we're getting a second moon for a little while? Well, there are some things about this that they're not telling you. And in typical clickbait fashion, the headlines would have you believe that the Earth is getting a second moon that you'll actually be able to see at night. But the real story, unfortunately, is not exactly as the headline describes it. It's not as exciting. First, this isn't really a moon like the one that we're used to seeing. This is actually called a mini moon, which really is just an asteroid. And it's only the size of a city bus, so you will not be able to see it with the naked eye. Also, it's only going to orbit the Earth for about a month in November before flying back out to the solar system. So it won't even have enough time to complete a full orbit around the Earth.
I'm sorry.
Third and last, this isn't as rare as we might think. In fact, these mini moons, they happen almost every year. In fact, this is so common that some researchers claim that Earth always has a mini moon out there somewhere. So in closing, in the mini moon department, watch out for those clickbait headlines. And another one that's come up is this meteor shower. So a new study suggests that millions of space rock fragments, which were ejected from the 2022 collision between the asteroid Dimorphos and NASA's DART spacecraft, could be on a collision course with Earth. And if you listen to the headlines, on the surface, that sounds really bad, almost apocalyptic. But are the headlines telling us the entire story? In short, no. First, the space fragments themselves are incredibly small, and they will not pose a threat to life on Earth. Also, the fragments won't begin to enter our atmosphere, where they will burn up long before hitting the surface, until another decade or so. So we got a while. Third, and maybe most interesting, is this could trigger the first ever human-made meteor showers. Now, while that's certainly big news, and it is a first ever event in human history, all the information we currently have on it shows that this does not pose a risk, and we will not see the effects until another 10 years or so. So, as always, I'll keep you updated if anything changes.
concerning the economically unstable times that we live in.
Wait, better hide that then.
Better hide that then.
Oh, oh, look out, he's going to take out.
Don't let him pull it. Oh, get rid of him. Take him out.
Come on.
Dollars in silver back in the 1960s. Today, it would be worth around $28,000. So one of the best ways to protect your purchasing power discovered signs of alien life out in the cosmos. Some even go as far as to say the telescope has detected city lights similar to what is seen on Earth from space. But of course, when you get past the headline and read the actual story, the truth is a lot more mundane than many originally thought. So an exoplanet called K2-18b was discovered to have a hydrogen-based atmosphere and is located in the so-called habitable zone, which is an area of a solar system, any solar system, far enough away yet not too close to the central star that if an exoplanet were found there, it could potentially support life. But of course, distance from a star is only one of many, 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 many prerequisites for life. But this is usually how these stories are sold in order to increase excitement and interest in exoplanets. Because ultimately that's how they get funded. In reality, the James Webb Telescope detected possible trace amounts of dimethyl sulfide, or DMS, in the exoplanet's atmosphere. On Earth, DMS is known to originate from microscopic marine creatures like phytoplankton. But even researchers working on this project admit that they're not sure if the readings are accurate because the signal from the telescope is incredibly weak and the results only show up when looking at it in certain ways. So in short, they're really not sure if they found anything at all. Now, you probably noticed in the headlines too, there's always things about aliens. Oh, there's always a new claim of a possible discovery of alien life. So speaking of the fascination with discovering aliens, how should we as Christians react to all of the alien propaganda nowadays? Recent surveys show that American adults are more likely to believe that extraterrestrials are visiting Earth than to believe in God as he's revealed himself in the Bible. A 2012 study from the National Geographic Channel found that 36% of Americans believe that UFOs exist. The same percentage said they believe that aliens have visited Earth. 77% said there is evidence that Earth has been visited. To compare, the Barna Group found in 2017 that while 73% of American adults call themselves Christian, only 10% have a biblical worldview. A third of America's adult population, about 81 million people or so, believe in ET, and only 10% of us, about 24 million, believe in God as the Bible describes him. So in other words, doctrinally sound Bible-believing Christians are outnumbered in America by ET believers 3-1. And this is why it's so important for Christians to get involved in the conversation around aliens and not shy away from it. I mean, after all, we have the true gospel, but they have an ET gospel. So what is the difference between the ET gospel and the biblical gospels, and why do both exist today? Well, we live in a nation that has rejected the concepts of sin and salvation as obsolete. A belief system that offers salvation without sin, or the stress and effort of defending it, is perfect for people like this. The ET gospel sells because guilt feels bad, thinking is hard, and the only sin in a postmodern world is telling someone else that his or her worldview is flawed. Doctrine in this ET religion is built upon scraps of evidence, some of it contradictory. And since there's no central office to enforce orthodoxy, believers are free to read into their gods just about anything that they want. Christians, on the other hand, believe in a deity who told us his followers to love God with all their hearts, souls, and minds, and who sent his son Jesus Christ to take our penalty of death from our sins unto himself. That's the difference between the alien gospel and our true gospel of Jesus Christ. And again, this is why this topic is so important for us Christians to understand and contend with. In fact,
Even with something like alien abductions, it's actually pretty easy to debunk some of the claims, and not necessarily to show that they didn't happen, but to show that while these abduction scenarios may be taking place, that they're probably not aliens, they're not extraterrestrials at all, but are likely demonic in nature. For example, many alien abductees claim to have intrusive medical procedures done on them by aliens while aboard a UFO. These medical procedures are usually incredibly painful, even leaving physical abrasions the next day. Now, we humans are able to perform medical procedures without causing any pain. Things like anesthesia can be used, so there's no suffering or memory of the procedure at all. And these can be done without leaving abrasions and scoop marks that abductees have reported. Why then would technologically advanced ETs need to take the individual aboard the UFO, subject them to all sorts of torturous experiences, and leave them with the evidence to show something had actually happened? Even when they try to erase their memories, that's often flawed because a lot of times, as some people claim, they can be reclaimed. You don't get that with anesthesia, though. Well, the likely answer is that these beings are malevolent. And they wish to leave enough evidence for us to know something happened without giving us solid answers. This is the same tactic used throughout history against humanity by ancient false gods and demons, and even things like cult leaders. People like cult leaders have capitalized on this. Just give enough information, but don't give it all. And so that's what builds fascination, builds excitement, and we see that with the ET fascination today. So those are the stories, and in closing, since much of what we talked about today has a claim in some kind of root of science, it begs the questions. Can Christians really trust science? Well, this is why I believe it's important for the church to have at least a base understanding of these things. We should not want scientists nor physicists, whether involved in the occult, atheism, or anything else apart from biblical Christianity, to define our doctrines for us. However, we also should not want to run from their scientific findings altogether. There's a difference here between an observable fact and a subjective interpretation of what that fact means for the rest of us. In short, we don't want to follow Darwin and let a biased interpretation of scientific observation dictate how we believe, but we also don't want to follow Rome and imprison Galileo for proposing something scientifically unbiased just because it's different than what we're traditionally used to. There is a fine line to walk here between ignorance and fear, yet if we don't fall into the extremes of either side, the journey can actually be a pretty exciting, enlightening, and even enjoyable one. Let's take that a step further, since we discussed CERN earlier. Why should Christians be open to quantum physics? Well, first of all, because it's part of God's creation. It helps us better understand the complexity of God's design. And this understanding can lead to a fuller grasp of some of the more supernatural things written about in the Bible. Second, it can be used as an apologetic and witnessing tool. If you are attempting to defend your faith or share the gospel with somebody who already has an understanding of some of the theories surrounding modern physics, then it definitely helps to be able to speak to them in terms that they can understand. And this is especially true in providing answers from the Bible to questions that come from a scientific worldview. And third, because it's just fascinating. I mean, the idea of a reality beyond what we can physically experience is a belief that falls right in line with biblical Christianity. Why wouldn't we want to know more about that if we have the opportunity? And that might bring up the question, well, what about teachings that come out of science like the multiverse? Is the multiverse with different versions of each of us today biblically possible, or does that idea negate God completely? Well, if it was ever proven, it would only show that God's creation is far more complex than we originally thought. But wouldn't that mean that there are different versions of us that aren't saved? Yes, if that's true, but while the other you might look and sound like you, they would still have a separate spirit and soul. This does not negate your personal free will, because you still have the choice to do whatever you want, even if the other you chooses something different. Now, I personally don't believe in that kind of multiverse, because I don't believe infinity can exist in physical reality. And, they say there's an infinite number of universes. I don't believe that. And nowhere does Scripture tell us that God created reality like that. But it also doesn't really contradict, depending what's being claimed. If scientists ever did discover a parallel universe, I don't think that should shake our faith at all. And, you know, this is why we should learn to study these things, be open to them, not immediately jump to you know, rash decisions on what we're going to believe, but actually look at it and see if it conflicts with the Bible. If it actually conflicts with the objective facts that are in the Bible, then obviously you throw it out. You throw out the alternate theory. You don't throw away the Bible, you keep the Bible. But if it only conflicts with an interpretation, and that interpretation may not be true, and it's not a solid core foundational belief, then it might be worth at least exploring. So, no, I don't believe in the multiverse, at least not in that way. There's a version of it that I think is correct, but it's not that. It's not the many worlds interpretation, as it's called. I don't believe in that whatsoever. But if it were ever proven true that there are parallel universes with different versions of us, it wouldn't freak me out, and it wouldn't shake my faith one bit. It wouldn't have any bearing on my faith at all. I might have some questions. But it would just mean, again, that there's more out there than we know, and we already know that's true anyway, because God didn't tell us everything. By the way, if you want more on that topic and many of the topics we talked about today, a great place to start is to check out my books, Quantum Creation and Cherubim Chariots, which are available now at Prophecy Watchers.
Okay, I got another one, guys. Hang on. Where did it go? Oh, man. Oh, that's right. Hang on. It didn't load, did it? Hang on, it didn't load. I'll just play this while I find it. 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 Oh, man. Hang on. Where'd that go? Oh, man. Okay, got it. Did it load? Oh, it's still now it'll load.
We weaken the American workers. Something huge is about to happen, and United States dominance is on the line right now. While most of the United States is focused on our election just 23 days away, something huge is happening where the global world order is being rearranged right before our eyes right now. And Washington, D.C. is desperately trying to hold on to power. There is a global war that is quietly happening that they don't want you to know about. Guys, this is as big as it gets for world power and U.S. dollar dominance and the failure of this Biden administration. So you better pay attention to what's happening. So there are a number of huge news developments that we need to cover today, which have massive implications for Western powers. And I'm going to show you something very troubling that NATO just did, which no mainstream media are covering, by the way. It's very concerning. But first, let's start with what's happening in Russia in just 9 days from now, a global showdown that is unprecedented in its scale and its implications. A titanic struggle is about to unfold between NATO and the BRICS nations. The timing, by the way, is set on purpose right before the United States election. It's a clear message from Putin and China that American dominance is coming to an end. This clash will officially kick off at the eagerly anticipated BRICS summit in Kazan, Russia on October 22nd. Now, while the mainstream media might be busy pushing distractions, we are here to break down what's going on right now, what's truly at stake, a global battle over resources, the unraveling of the U.S. dollar's dominance, the sort of fighting to hang on from NATO, and the potential shift for a seismic shift in global power dynamics right now. Now, you might be asking, why all the fuss about this summit? This isn't just any summit. This is the equivalent right now of after World War II, which gave American dollar reserve currency status around the world. This BRICS summit represents the death of the Bretton Woods Conference and the end of U.S. dollar dominance. Donald Trump said this is going to be worse than losing a war.
Our country's going to hell, and we're not going to be the big boy. We have power, but it's waning. In fact, it's waning in terms of our currency. And I'm not just talking about the value of our currency. I'm talking about our currency being used throughout the world.
You want it to remain. You want the dollar to remain the world's reserve currency.
Well, I think it's bigger than losing any war.
And Trump is right. Under President Biden and Kamala Harris, the BRICS nations have massively accelerated their size and scope. On October 22nd, the BRICS countries, comprised of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa as its leaders, now expanding to include Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the UAE. It now represents a staggering 35.6% of global GDP by purchasing power parity and 45% of the world's population. Iran has joined BRICS. At the same time, nutjobs in Washington, D.C. want to go to war with Iran to help Israel.
Bugger me.
Who knew there was a shower island that soap scum?
You could you.
I've been saying for 6 months now, hit Iran. They have oil fields out in the open. They have the Revolutionary Guard headquarters you can see from space. Blow it off the map.
You see how this is lining up? Russia and China backing Iran? How do you think this is going to go? This grouping is now a significant counterbalance to Western economic and geopolitical hegemony, strength in numbers. But where does the real power come from? It comes from the resources. And that's exactly what this conference is all about. Putin is now setting his sights on resource-rich regions around the world, from the lithium plains of South America to uranium fields in Africa. And of course, the ever-vital oil and gas reserves. Energy resources are at the heart of this brewing conflict right now, but no one's really talking about it. The United States right now is set to double its electricity usage because of AI. And guess what? We get almost all of our uranium from Russia, all of our enriched uranium from Russia. What happens when Putin stops sending any to us? Game over. As you know, the surge for lithium, copper, and other critical minerals right now is really what's driving this covert global war. Now imagine if the BRICS nations cornered these markets. Western supply chains, especially those in tech and renewable energies, could face cataclysmic disruptions. We heard right from Senator Lindsey Graham's own mouth that the reason we're even in Ukraine is because of all of the minerals there.
They're sitting on $1 trillion worth of minerals that could be good to our economy. So I want to keep helping our friends in Ukraine. We can win this. They need our help.
And look at Zelensky just selling out his country's minerals. What a mongrel. Wow.
That's right. We're literally stealing their minerals. So the United States and NATO allies might find themselves scrambling to secure lesser alternative sources as the energy balance tilts towards BRICS. And of course, we now have confirmation that Hurricane Helene that struck western North Carolina struck an area with massive lithium deposits. Lithium that the United States government desperately needs. It was right under their feet. It is very curious how a hurricane struck in that exact location. So the U.S. government has the perfect opportunity for a land grab now in western North Carolina. Now, resources are one thing. Now let's talk about currency. With the BRICS summit only days away, there's more than just mere speculation that they're about to launch a new currency backed by gold. This new currency will aim to remove the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency of the world. As economist and gold expert Peter Schiff just said, this is the fault of the Biden administration, putting severe sanctions on Russia that drove them to do this.
Peter, how about it? I don't see anything good of the BRICS nations coming together and strategizing, as they say, to pretty much take over the world and screw over the West, which is us. I'm a little concerned. Shouldn't we be worried?
Oh, we should be. First of all, they supply us with a lot of goods, but they also have loaned us a lot of money. The United States really depends on the dollar as the reserve currency. But what we did with those sanctions, we gave the world a powerful reason not to want to be a part of that system anymore.
So Schiff is right. We're feeling these monstrous effects on American soil. The effects of these shifts are palpable. For instance, we're witnessing a surge in core producer price inflation this week. As Zero Hedge reports, even as energy prices temporarily sag, the food and services costs continue to climb. Americans are feeling these pressures acutely. I'm sure you are. Right at the gas pump, at the grocery store, with heating bills. How many of you are experiencing the doubling of your grocery bills right now? Let me know down below. Americans are restless. They're sick of this. I'm sick of it. So to understand the full magnitude of what's upcoming, you need to understand how these globalist policies have eroded domestic economic foundations. We've outsourced critical minerals and industries, thanks to liberal policies. We've weakened the American workers' competitive edge around the world, and we've offshored all of it. President Trump called this out. He said we must stop globalization.
If you want freedom, take pride in your country. Wise leaders always put the good of their own people and their own country first. The future does not belong to globalists.
Perhaps that's why they tried to assassinate him when he wants to stop the globalist agenda. The deep state military actively wants a war with these countries in order to retain US dollar dominance. Trump wants to build up America's manufacturing at home, build up our own infrastructure at home. So as the BRICS summit approaches, NATO is trying to flex its muscles. And this week, NATO did something that no one really covered because of the twin hurricanes that were hitting the United States. Yes, NATO is running nuclear preparedness drills, preparing for a nuclear war against Russia.
Wow.
But they said, don't worry, we're not using live warheads. Oh, good. But they're planning for a nuclear war. Tabletop exercises on how they would deploy troops across Europe in order to invade and attack Russia, and how we would respond to a nuclear war. This is the reality we're living in right now, folks. The world is changing right before our eyes, and Trump might be our only hope to stop this madness. So that's the news update part of today's video. Now I want to talk about today's sponsor, which is tied directly to everything we're talking about today in this international.
Okay, I don't want to talk about sponsors.
Microsoft included are rightly concerned that when they scale their AI businesses, they're going to face huge energy shortages. Therefore, they are making plays of their own to secure electricity independence, primarily through uranium. Amazon, another giant entering the nuclear industry, is also concerned about the length of time it would take to obtain the crucial electricity for its data centers. That's why they're all turning towards nuclear. Now, if you think that China is waiting around and watching how America does it without a fight, you're dead wrong. They are on it big time right now. So what I did in the midst of these massive trends right now in the bull market in uranium is I found a company that is still more than 50% below its all-time highs, but that it's also made a clear bottom and it's bounced back nicely into shape lately. In other words, I look for a high-quality, well-managed business that is cheap and in my view is on an uptrend right now. That's how I like to invest. It's my only play right now in the nuclear sector. This is the only one. And it's today's sponsor, that's Atha Energy. Here's their ticker symbol on your screen. Now, I asked them to sponsor today's video because I've been a big fan of their company for more than a year, and I've been tracking what they're doing. And right now, the global demand for uranium, especially in the United States, is off the charts. Now, as you can see, look at their share price. It has plummeted this year. This is a gift, really, because it's bounced back a bit, but it's still 50%.
Okay, I don't like to hear about that money stuff.
How do you spot a high-performing team? You could analyze how they tackle complex challenges or admire how they meet every deadline. But the easiest way is to simply ask, do you use Smartsheet?
Thing you need to know, my friends, this is Tony. Hope you're all doing well. We're going to get into a ton of stuff as usual in this video. I'm going to talk about something rather surprising with regards to stores closing. We have McDonald's, even one of their major suppliers, going out of business. We have a couple of very large companies shutting down tons of stores. I'm going to get into that. That's sort of the small story we're going to get into. The big story, I'm going to talk about something that's happening, of course, in Germany that tells you everything you need to know, my friends, about what we're seeing over here. And it's pretty big and surprising. We'll get into that as we get farther into this video. It relates to, of course, Aurora, and you'll see what this could, in the end, mean. All right, and it's not good. Let's just say it's not good. All right. Anyway, we'll get into that, and actually, we're going to get into a ton of other stuff as well. Something that we're going to get into Diddy a little bit. Also, some stuff with Hollywood and a number of other things. Also, some stuff about Richard Dawkins and others. We're going to get into a ton of stuff. First of all, let's just get into this right here. 7-Eleven closes 444 stores amid strategic pivot. This shows you kind of what has been happening. We, of course, have been seeing various stores closing, but usually it's like second-tier closures, right? Kind of like some company you really never heard of. Or maybe you've heard of it, but they're not like the top dog company, right? Now you're seeing ones like 7-Eleven closing. But on top of that, we're seeing McDonald's, largest French fry distributor, or supplier, actually, not distributor, McDonald's largest French fry supplier shutters, closes factory, blames meal deals. Yes, indeed. You remember the $5? They have the new $5 meal deal apparently. Razor thin profits, maybe. I guess that's what's going on with that. They're not very happy about it, right? They're not very happy about this. They're not making enough money, clearly. Of course, McDonald's just completely copied Wendy's. Wendy's has their, like, what do they call it, Biggie Bag or whatever. It's like $6, $5. They've been doing that forever. And I think McDonald's and Burger King copied them because they were losing so much money. They're like, oh, we got to somehow get this money back. And they're thinking they could just basically, treat their suppliers badly and not give them any money and thinking they'll somehow stay in business, right? That's probably what happened. McDonald's is like, you have to do it for this price. Well, we're not going to make any money. Well, that's the price. Oh, we went out of business. Sorry. This is kind of what's going on. Obviously, it's because no one has any, spending money anymore because they're, dealing with so much debt and inflation and all that kind of stuff. U.S. consumer sentiment unexpectedly falls on high cost of living. And a lot of it comes down to your rent, your mortgage being very expensive these days.
Phil.
This is what's causing people to have no money to spend. We're seeing also jobless claims surge to highest level in more than a year. This is due to, of course, the hurricane. It has to do with these UAW strikes, the port, the plant shutdowns, all this stuff, adding to the jobless claims. And that, of course, is led into long-term unemployment, which indicates we're already, once again, probably the third time in a recession. And what's interesting, of course, is we're going to get into something we're seeing in Germany on the economic level and also on another level. I'm going to talk about the big story, too, that has to do with Germany. But we have Japan. They had a stock market crash like a month and a half ago. We had Hong Kong just had one, like a few days ago. And we have the yield curve, which appears to be saying that we're going to have one here very soon. And I think once we have one, it's like pretty much game over for the economy, I think, worldwide. This is almost worldwide, but you know what I'm saying. So then we have, of course, Big Lots, 340 stores set to close. This just came out, I think, almost 2 weeks ago at this point. But we're seeing Big Lots. Of course, they're talking about having issues and going to bankruptcy like a couple months ago. But now they're starting to close tons of locations. So we're going to get into these big stories. The one with Germany that also ties into Aurora. And you're going to see how important this all is as we get farther in this video. It's actually pretty big. And we're going to get into also a number of other topics as well. First of all, I'm going to mention food supply, 25-year shelf life. Link is in the description. 3 months worth for $6.97. This is the option with more calories, I believe, if I remember correctly. They have another one with a little bit less calories for $5.60. This one, though, sort of the premium package. Link is in the description for that. You're going to definitely want to get it if you haven't already, my friends. You know what's going on around. You can see all the stuff going on around us. Looking super awesome. I'm sure it's going to continue way past next month. I'm thinking we're going to be seeing a lot of mostly peaceful type of stuff happening in even January. Whoever wins, him, her, whoever, doesn't matter who wins. You know it's going to be lots of fun going all the way into January, right? So you definitely want to be prepared. Link is in the description of this book as well. The Lost Ways, how your great-great-grandfather lived without electricity, how to build a cellar, do things around the house like they did in the good old days, hundreds of pages illustrated. Fact is, you might want to have the book. You never know what's next. You're going to definitely need it before something happens. You want to get the printed version of it. $37 for shipping. Link is in the description. And of course, also gold and silver. We know a stock market crash is coming. The fact of the matter is gold and silver went up 61% during the Great Depression. These things historically go up a lot whenever the stock market crashes. Link is in the description for that as well. $4.95 a month. First month is free. Let's get back to the video. So, of course, we had here JD on a certain ABC broadcast talking about what happened, in Aurora. And, of course, this lady interrupts him saying, no, sir, that's not really what's happening. Only a handful of apartment complexes have been taken, of course, over by these gangs, like as if a handful is a small amount. You know what I mean? Like, this is not a big town. Aurora is not like Chicago. Okay. Matter of fact, I think it might even be smaller than the city I'm in. Okay. And my city doesn't have like 100 apartment complexes. It might have, I don't even know what it has, but I'm guessing probably, I'm going to just guess 25. I don't even know what the number would be. But if you have a handful, what is that? 8, 10? How many is that? I don't even know what a handful is. That sounds like it could easily be a quarter of the apartment complexes in the entire city. That's not a small amount, right? That's not a small amount. So for her to say it's a handful, like that's a small thing, is not really accurate. Of course, you had this, I showed this, I think I showed this video already on this channel, where we have this line of people standing outside trying to get in the convention center to hear 45 speak in Aurora. And this line goes all the way back here and it goes all the way around this entire field. It's just unbelievable. I mean, this could be easily, you know, a world record. I don't even know. It could very easily be a world record. It just keeps going forever. Probably easily a mile long. I'm not sure how long it is. Maybe it's more than a mile. I don't even know. It's just very huge. I've never seen a line this long. But that's how much people are interested in hearing him in that particular city where these gangs were at. To me, that makes it very clear that they're very concerned about it. And this could very easily be something that we need to be concerned about overall, right?
100%.
In our country. And what's interesting is you have something that recently happened within the last couple of days in Germany. You have this thousands of, we're talking Arabs. And these, again, these are what I call the not so legals. They just come in. Did they really come in, of course, the right way? I don't know. I don't know. They're demanding to change Germany into, of course, a caliphate. And they're like very loud, very bold. And there's, I don't even know how many thousands there are. Maybe 10,000. I don't know what it is. 5,000, 10,000. I don't know what it is. It's a lot. Okay. So it's like, to me, it's like they're saying they own, of course, the country or something. And my question is, could this be something that we can learn from? Do we want this happening, of course, here? And obviously, it's not from, these people are not from the same area, right? Most likely not all Arabs here, of course. I mean, it sounds like it's quite a bit of different, you know, groups. I don't even know. It seems like a lot of different stuff. We have Venezuelan. We got what? I don't know, man. I mean, in my city here, we have what was it? It's some Asian country. I can't remember what it is though. But there's a ton of them. It's not India. It's some other country. But it just makes you wonder, right? It's just like it's really weird too, because like they'll just all go to one area. Like one city will be like this, another city will be like that.
Divide and conquer
and stuff. So it is kind of, you know, concerning looking into that. And on top of that, Germany, the country I just showed you, their economy goes from bad to worse. Economy Minister Robert Habeck confirms that the GDP is set to contract for the second year in a row. Not doing well. Inflation is also running amok there as here. And what I wanted to point out is, like I said, you look at all the top GDPs in the world. You have United States is number 1, China number 2, Germany, and then Japan. Japan had a stock market crash a month and a half ago. China just had one a couple days ago. Germany's economy goes from bad to worse. And we just had the yield curve uninvert, which indicates we're going to have a stock market crash very soon here. So this, if all of these economies are right on the edge, all 4 of the top ones, what do you think that means? Clearly not good for the world economy. Could we be seeing a very, very large, of course, economic crash soon here? And you had the stock market, like I said, this was not a huge crash with the Hong Kong one, but it was about 10%. It was 9.41%. And like I said, with Japan, they had like a 20-something percent. These are not huge, but I'm thinking if the United States has one, it's going to be. I'm thinking it's going to be over 50%. This is just my guess. We are sort of the top dog in this whole thing. We'll see how it works out. But we have Jamie Dimon, the CEO of Chase, warns of, you know, geopolitical conditions that are getting worse. So we're seeing that as well. he clearly sees the writing on the wall and is letting people know about it, right? You have, of course, also America overall, falling apart. Where our priorities are in dire need of restructuring. We saw kind of how we've been giving so much money, to other, of course, countries, and while at the same time we have people here in need. We saw what happened in Asheville, North Carolina. We have collapsing bridges, buckling roads, overheated railways, deteriorating power lines, just everything. We have power plants that are coming to the end of their life. We have nothing to replace it. Easily 300 million people could face power outages in the next 4 years, according to some of the stats. Here we have it right here, where he's talking about it. 300 million people could face power. And this is because we don't build new power plants. Obviously, electricity doesn't grow on trees. Well, maybe back in the old, not trees, but maybe it was up in the sky. That's another topic, but yeah, so you get the idea. So we have all this stuff going on. You have, of course, in Aurora, they had a sheriff of one of the biggest counties come and speak, saying, yes, it is an important, it's of course a big deal, all the stuff that's going on there, right? And what's interesting is, as I mentioned before, we've seen BlackRock, the company, show up lots of recent. Here we are again. I showed it with Helene. Now we're seeing it with this topic. BlackRock creates foundation to advance a more inclusive and sustainable economy. Of course, right? This is something that and this is from a few years ago. So it's not like this has been around. It's not like this has been around just for a few days or something. This is something they put out 4 years ago, and you can see they were already expecting the not-so-legals. We got to give jobs to them. Why are you talking about it 4 years ago? What is that all about? Weren't we dealing with the whole back then? Why are you talking about that 4 years ago? That's kind of weird. So you got that. And I think it's wise for us to be doing a little bit of prayer for our country. This guy had a dream, and he saw the guardian angel, of course, of our country, saying that we need to be praying, for our country because of all the things that are going on. We've seen how the rich have gotten richer, the poor are poorer, Jeff Bezos, all these guys doing inside selling, Mark Zuckerberg, Michael Dell, Vince McMahon, and Peter Thiel, all these people, while the dollar is losing value. We're seeing, of course, also a number of things going on, and I think this all ties into this prediction. The 7 mountain, of course, prophecy, which talks about a changing. We're talking of those over the top people over various industries and sectors, including the GOV, education, business, Hollywood, even the church. And I believe we're seeing this happening in real time right now. I believe we're seeing this because we saw the story with Diddy. And I believe because this is a little bit different this time. This isn't the same as the guy with the island. I think this time it's going to play out a lot different. Because he made a lot of tapes and he sold them, he gave them out of things going on at his, of course, parties. This isn't the same guy. Okay, the other guy, he had all that stuff for himself. He didn't sell it, he didn't give it out. This guy did. So I think these are going to be snagging a number of people, celebrities, high up people, kings, princes, all that kind of stuff. And of course, you have also the same stuff happening in Hollywood. You have a number of people losing their job. She-Hulk star Tatiana Maslany, angry over getting cut out of Deadpool and Wolverine. Kind of funny considering she was She-Hulk, so she got angry. Turned green. She's not the only one, of course. Brie Larson was cut out as well. And we're seeing actually this happening everywhere now. We had even Whoopi Goldberg losing millions of dollars because she was just cut out of a ton of Toy Story 5. And that's not it. There's actually more. We had Robert De Niro cut out of Joker 2 partially. The movie still was a failure. But the reason why they're doing all this, of recent is because they saw that it does make a difference. If you put these people in these movies, like Robert De Niro, Whoopi Goldberg, Tatiana, or Brie Larson, or even Amber Heard, it can make your movie lose tons of money. They saw it with Aquaman first. They saw it with Phase 4. They saw it with Star Wars Outpost. They saw it actually with a lot of different things of recent. They're like, whoa, wait a second. We can't put these people in our movies anymore. We put them in, we're going to lose a ton of money. So in Aquaman, they lost a couple $100 million. So with Deadpool, they're like, okay, we're just going to cut them both out completely. And they've made a ton of money. And now people have all seen that. All these producers are like, oh, shoot, this works. Just cut them out. So they're all cutting them out now.
Good.
So this is what I was saying. You have this changing of the guard. You have Hollywood even changing because they need to make money, and they're seeing that these people are making them lose money. So they're being removed. And we're seeing this even in the church. We're even seeing this in the atheist sector, believe it or not, of all places. Richard Dawkins coming out as a cultural believer, which is hilarious, considering he used to make fun of believers. He comes out as a cultural believer.
Would be your Easter message? I mean, I've said a few things. What would you tell the nation?
Well, I must say I was slightly horrified to hear that Ramadan is being promoted instead. I do think that we are culturally a Christian country. I call myself a cultural Christian.
Yeah, he says he's a cultural believer now. The guy, the king of atheism, the top dog of the four horsemen, Richard Dawkins, is now a cultural Christian. That's what he says. Kind of hilarious to watch. You have also this guy, what's his name? Alex O'Connor. I think he used to call his channel Cosmic Skeptic. He changed his name. Now he's kind of in the middle, riding the fence. I don't know if I believe or not. I'm just an intellectual. It's kind of funny. I'll play this clip real quick.
If our thoughts are the result of some random evolutionary process, why should we believe anything we think is true?
Well, the first thing is that evolution isn't a random process. But that aside, it's
well. Let me put it this way: it's either directed by an outside intelligence or it's not.
Sure. Okay.
If it's not directed by an outside intelligence, then it's random.
Yes.
So he just admitted he was wrong. And it's almost like he didn't even realize he's saying, well, maybe there is a God when he says this. It's just kind of curious when he said that, yeah, so it clearly can't be random. It has to be a God if it's not random, right? This is basically what he's saying. And he actually agreed with it. So you have that. You have also this guy, Stephen Meyer, who was recently on Piers Morgan, basically giving every argument that debunks atheist arguments, apparently, on this broadcast. Piers Morgan putting it out not that long ago. You have, of course, so you have atheists falling. You have church leaders falling. You got Carl Lentz here in a recent interview talking about how could he have a double life, trying to explain that out. You got Stephen Lawson. I've talked about this before on this channel. All these people falling, and I explained it out previously. I think on this channel I explained it. I'm pretty sure I explained this out, why this occurs, and how the devil's actually made. I believe the devil sort of inspired two different big camps in the church. And one of them is like prosperity, miracles, kind of prosperity miracles type of thing. And then you got kind of the logic, scripture, Calvinism, no miracles. So you got miracles, no miracles, logic versus experience. And it's kind of like the devil set this up or sort of inspired it because it should be logic and experience. It should be miracles, right? So you combine it, get rid of all the bad stuff because a house divided against itself cannot stand. First, we saw the prosperity guys falling over here, the prosperity guys falling. Now we're seeing all the Calvinist guys.
Okay, guys, I can't stop the glare, so I may as well hang up. It's only got another minute to go. See you tomorrow, guys. Jukebox Saturday night tomorrow.